Hello guys, we are back in new fanfic, and if enjoying this then please share and like part 2. Now let's start the fanfic. Alright boys and girls, calm down. Hitaki Kakashi stood in the middle of the exam room, surveying all the genin that had made it there without being led astray. He was relieved to see both Naruto and Hinata. Of course it wasn't hard to find them. Naruto was not only one of the tallest, but who could miss that shock of blonde hair? Hyuga Hinata stood next to him. He noticed how Naruto stood closer to Hinata than someone else normally would. Kakashi smiled to himself. Looks like Naruto had made a new friend while training for the past week. Kakashi tore his gaze from the two and addressed the rest of the genin in the room. He had volunteered to be the Junin instructor during the written part of the quiz. He told himself it was because he had never done a Chunin exam before, but he knew what the truth was. It was because one of his own students was going to be taking the exam this time around. He wanted to keep an eye on Naruto. The last time he had already lost one of his students, he wasn't going to let it happen again. Everyone look at the seating chart and find your places. Those not seated within the next minute will be disqualified. The room turned into a scene of chaos as all the genin rushed towards the walls to look at the seating charts pinned up to the wall. Kakashi grinned inwardly. Maybe he should have given them 5 minutes. Naruto almost panicked, until he saw Hinata using her Byakugan. She would be able to see the charts without having to move. Naruto smiled. Quick thinking, and to think he was going to try barreling through the crowd. Hinata couldn't believe it. She knew her Byakugan was working just fine, but the charts said that Naruto's seat was 15A, and hers was 16A. They were going to sit right next to each other, just like in their first exam 3 years ago. She had expected to not be able to sit next to Naruto-kun, or anywhere near him for that matter. She was elated. They only had a few seconds left though. She did the first thing that came to mind. She grabbed Naruto's hand and began to drag him. This way, Naruto-kun. Naruto found himself being dragged to his seat by the smaller Hinata. She pointed to his seat while blushing for some reason. As he sat, he was about to turn to her and tell her to get to her seat when she sat right next to him. His eyes widened in surprise. Are you sure, Hinata-chan? Hinata nodded, keeping her eyes on the desk in front of her. It is what the seating charts said. Naruto was elated as well. Alright. Just like last time, we are so going to kick in this, aren't we? Hinata looked up and smiled. She felt a small bit of relief at the fact that he wanted to sit next to her, but a small part of her said that she already knew that he wanted to. She frowned at that thought. How would she know that? Kakashi surveyed the room. Only 3 hadn't made it to their seats. They were the ones who had tried to bull rush their way through the other genin to get a look at the charts. They were disqualified. 2 leaf and a stone nin. Kakashi didn't lie. There were now only 42 students left. Perfect. Kakashi pulled out his own copy of the chart and began to check off the genin sitting at their desks. Amazingly, all of them made it to the correct seats. Alright kiddies, just to inform you, your seating arrangement was completely random, and there's a little surprise for you at the end that has to deal with that. Anyway, before we begin the test and all that no cheating that I explained earlier, we have a surprise visit from the Hokage. Tsunade was instantly relieved when she entered the exam room. There was Naruto and sitting to his left was Hinata. Tsunade smiled to herself mischievously. She could be caught and the entire exam could be called off and held in one of the other countries in the next 6 months. But that's what gambling was all about, and lately, ever since she met Naruto, she had been betting on other things rather than money, and winning more often than not. It had taken a bit of effort, but nothing the 6th Hokage of Konoha could handle. Altering the seating arrangement so that Naruto and Hinata sat next to each other was nothing compared to some of the things she had done in the past. Now she just had to pray that she wasn't caught. Welcome Leaf Genin and Genin from the other hidden villages. Whether this your first time, or your 10th, I wish you the best of luck. As you know, the Chunin exam receives light alterations to the rules every year, so expect the worst. You'll be better prepared and able to deal with the challenges you will be facing. Again, My best wishes, I will be watching all of your progress. With that, she looked meaningfully at where Naruto and Hinata sat and turned to go. Kakashi noticed Tsunade's smile and gaze before she left and looked up to see Hinata and Naruto sitting next to each other. He couldn't believe that he had missed that while checking the list. She didn't. But Kakashi had worked for Tsunade-sama for 3 years now. He knew her antics quite well, from being the butt of some of her jokes and deals. She did. Kakashi sighed. Well, might as well not stop the exam now that it had started. He secretly wished Naruto the best of luck. Alright, begin. Naruto didn't understand why Oba-chan had looked at him like that. What did she mean that we're going to be new surprises? Naruto stopped thinking about it when Kakashi-sensei yelled for them to begin. He looked meaningfully at Hinata-chan. They already knew they were supposed to cheat and had worked out a strategy beforehand. Now that they sat right next to each other, it would make things 10 times easier. About 10 minutes into the test, giving enough time for some of the students to answer the questions, Hinata activated the Byakugan. She looked through everything around her while only focusing on her own paper. She found one of them. Shikamaru was wearing a long robe and straw hat to hide his features. He knew the answers, of course, but he had to make it seem like he was actually trying, so he sat for 5 minutes at a time before answering each of the 10 questions, giving him just enough time to finish at the end. There was no hidden 10th question, like there was for him 3 years ago when he became a Chunin. This was his second time volunteering for the Chunin exam, to hide among the genin and answer questions correctly in order to aid the genin in their information gathering skills. Hinata had found one of the helpers, better yet it was Shikamaru. He would answer the questions perfectly. She signaled Naruto-kun by tapping her pencil on her lips as if she were deep in thought. Naruto saw the signal from the corner of his eye, and smiled inwardly. She had tapped 3 times, which meant she found one of the exam helpers, and that he was Junin. Perfect. Naruto sealed under his desk and whispered softly, handcuff jutsu. An invisible band of his chakra attached itself from his right hand to Hinata-chan's right hand, melding perfectly with the chakra in the armbands she wore. Naruto gave the signal by scratching his head. Hinata saw it easily. They were all set. She began to write down Shikamaru's answers as she watched him from 5 seats behind her. Naruto's hand, bonded with hers, with his handcuff jutsu, mimicked every movement. Naruto really didn't have to do much. It was Hinata-chan doing all the work actually. He just let his hand be maneuvered by hers like a puppet. That's how he came up with the handcuff jutsu, from talking with a hermit puppet master while traveling with Ero Sennin. Naruto had learned how to make chakra from his hands attached to something and move it around. He had never gotten farther than the rudimentary basics, but it was enough for him to come up with this jutsu. Hey! He had even kicked Lee Sanus with it. When the hour rang, Kakashi called for everyone to turn their papers over. Kakashi surveyed the room. There were 40 students left. Only 2 had been caught cheating enough to disqualify them. Wow! This is a pretty good group so far. Kakashi was happy at the fact that both Naruto and Hinata were still there. Alright children, now that that's over, I have some news. First, the papers will be collected and scanned. Please wait a few moments for your scores to come back. The papers were quickly gathered by a Chunin and brought to a machine that he fed the papers into one by one. It took about 15 minutes for all of the tests to go through. And then it spat out one sheet of paper which Kakashi grabbed and began to read. His eyes widened. All of them had passing scores. This group of genin really were good. Not bad. Kakashi looked up. You'll all be happy to know that the rest of you remaining have passed. There were whoops of joy and sighs of relief. Kakashi waited patiently for the noise to die down. Alright, now for the other part of my news. Kakashi brought both of his hands closer together, motioning everyone to move closer to the center. Hinata and Naruto did not have to move, they were already seated next to each other and directly in the middle. Alright, I can tell that many of you are not enjoying being this close to someone you don't know. Well, get used to it, cause all odd-numbered chairs, your partner is to your right, everyone in even-numbered chairs, vice versa. Complete silence, answered Kakashi as realization dawned on the genin in the exam room. Then there was a sudden explosion of yelling and protests. Kakashi sighed. He knew this was going to happen, but it was still annoying. Naruto quickly looked at his chair number, 15A, and odd number. He turned to Hinata-chan on his left. Joy and relief painted both of their faces. They had expected to be partners anyways, but if it wasn't for their luck at being sat next to each other, they would have been paired with someone else. Naruto realized how close he had come to not being able to keep his promise to Hinata-chan. And so he hugged her. Hinata was relieved as well. She didn't know what she would have done if she had been stuck with someone else. When Naruto-kun hugged her, she still blushed, but instead of going stiff as a board, like she usually did, she hugged him back, just this once allowing the happiness and relief flood through her. She really didn't know what she would have done if she wasn't with her Naruto-kun. Kakashi waited until the yelling finally died down into grumbling and semi-silence before speaking again. I know that many of you expected to perform the second part of the exam with your teammates that you came with, but if you didn't notice, we were excusing only one genin at a time from the exam, instead of the whole team like what is normally done. You can blame me for this arrangement because it was my idea. But just remember, we are testing you on how well you will perform as a team, and throwing you into two-man teams with a total stranger will test you at how well you adapt to new and unexpected situations. Of course, some of you are with someone you may already know, while others are thrown in with someone from a different village. All I have to say is this: deal with it. If you don't like it, quit. And with that he turned to go. He stopped at the door and looked over his shoulder. Meet all of you at Area 44, aka the Forest of Death, in 1 hour. Oh, and as a rule, you can't stab your partner in the back, or else you're immediately disqualified. See ya. Naruto was still hugging Hinata-chan after Kakashi left. He slowly released her and gave an embarrassed smile. For some reason he didn't want to let go of her. Come on. You heard Kakashi-sensei. We got to meet up at the forest in 1 hour. Let's get going. They had all gathered at the front of the walled-off section of forest, all 22-man teams. Kakashi was there explaining how that this time there would only be 3 days to get to the center tower, how you couldn't open the scrolls or else you were disqualified, and that there would some new surprises on the way. Naruto didn't like the sound of that, but there was no way he was backing down, especially with Hinata-chan there. He had made a promise, and he intended to keep it. Many of the genin were dismayed at learning that their numbers would be cut in half at the least. Only a max of 10 teams could make it to the finals, and not all of them would make it probably. Naruto was expecting it. It's what made it so much more interesting after all. Naruto grinned with his old confidence and determination. He was getting excited just standing here thinking about it. Each team began to take turns walking behind a screen in order to receive one of the 2 scrolls needed to enter the tower, the Earth and Heaven scroll. Each team only had one of the 2, and the only way of getting the other was defeating another team that hopefully had it. Naruto's eyes widened. There were 3 sound nins among the genin that had made it this far. They were all male. 2 of them were on one team, and the other was on a team with a grass nin. Naruto felt his hands clench into fists, his teeth grinding. Those bastards. They had to know something about Sasuke's whereabouts and where the hell he could find that damn Orochimaru. As the 2 teams with the sound nins passed through the screen and received the scrolls, Naruto nudged Hinata-chan softly and nodded towards the 2 teams. She caught the signal and activated her Byakugan. She had also noticed the sound nins and Naruto-kun's agitation at seeing them. The sound were the ones who had hurt Naruto-kun and his friends. She suddenly felt something she had never felt before: hate. They had hurt Naruto-kun during his last Chunin exam. They were men of that Orochimaru monster. They were here to take her Naruto-kun away from her. They both have Earth scrolls. Naruto looked down in surprise at the grim determination he had just heard in Hinata-chan's voice. He smiled at her. We can take them, Hinata-chan. You and me together, we're unstoppable. Hinata-chan blushed and smiled at his words. He loved it when he got her to smile. He had to find other ways to make her smile like that. It was finally their turn to go through the screen. Kakashi was behind the screen handing out scrolls. He looked meaningfully at both Naruto and Hinata. I wish the both of you the best of luck, and Naruto. Naruto looked up in acknowledgement. You noticed the 3 sound nins, yes? Naruto nodded slowly, his eyes going hard. Be wary, Naruto. I'm not supposed to tell you this, but I think I need to tell you. There haven't been any sound nins in the Chunin exams ever since you left 3 years ago. Then all of a sudden when you come back the sound village decides to register. I assume you're catching my drift. Naruto nodded. I'll be careful, Kakashi-sensei. Kakashi looked at them a moment more before heading them their scroll. Naruto looked at it for a second before putting it in his pouch. A heaven scroll. Perfect. Naruto and Hinata stood in front of their gate, their entrance to Area 44, simply known as the Forest of Death. They were waiting for it to open. You ready for this, Hinata-chan? Hinata looked into the eyes of the man she loved and told herself she would protect him, and in order to protect him she had agreed with him about tracking down the sound nins. She realized she had to destroy them in order to keep her Naruto-kun safe. Kakashi's words echoing through her thoughts. 3 years since the sound has entered the exam, and now Naruto returns and they come back. They wanted Naruto-kun. She would do everything in her power to make sure they never got their hands on him. She nodded. Hi, I am ready, Naruto-kun. Naruto was surprised by this new Hinata-chan. He had only seen her like this once before, when she had exploded the balloon that one training day several days ago. He wondered what was driving her to be so determined. Naruto grinned. She was strong. Together they would show the world what trash could really do. A red light above the gate began to blink and the massive twin gates opened enough to allow both of them through. They almost seemed to disappear as they charged ahead into the forest. Hinata was taking the lead, using her Byakugan to its full extent in an attempt to find any trace of the sound nins. It had been 7 hours and they hadn't even found trace of another team. They weren't being followed or led on. Her Byakugan could see everything in a 359-degree sphere. And she swept her head from side to side in order to make up for the blind spot behind her neck. Her Byakugan had improved because of their training together and she could see out to the full range of her Jiyuken arrow, 100 yards. No, they were definitely alone, and the sky was turning a deep purple color as started to become night. Naruto was frustrated. Why weren't all the teams around? He knew it wasn't Hinata-chan's fault, but they hadn't even found another team yet. Naruto looked at the sky, noticing the lengthening shadows. Naruto knew that the Byakugan didn't allow one to see in the dark. It didn't have night vision among all the things it could do, and he knew without it they would never find another team at this rate. Hinata-chan. Hinata looked over her shoulder. Even though she didn't have to. Hinata-chan, we need to stop for the night. You can't see at night and we're pretty much lost without your Byakugan. Hinata blushed but agreed. Oh, okay, Naruto-kun. He was right. They were tired and hungry from not resting all day, and she couldn't see at night any more than she could without the Byakugan. So they stopped in a little alcove created by 2 monstrous roots of an ancient oak tree. Hinata had never seen trees as big as these outside the Forest of Death. The roots themselves were at least 10 feet tall. Their little camp that Naruto-kun had set up was well hidden. They had eaten and Naruto-kun had given encouragement, stating that tomorrow was a new day. Hinata smiled. He was always so confident, never doubting himself. She wished she was like that, at least sometimes. They were about to lay down to sleep, when all of a sudden something completely unexpected happened. It began to snow. Naruto frowned at the little flakes of ice. So this is what Kakashi-sensei meant by new surprises. Worse, it was getting colder and fast. They hadn't packed winter gear. All they had was a blanket that Naruto had let Hinata-chan use to make her bed. He began to shiver uncontrollably as the temperature quickly dropped below freezing. Hinata wasn't much better off, matter of fact she was worse. She was turning blue on the lips and her complexion was getting pale. She was shivering without control, she was going to get hypothermia soon if she didn't get warm. Even the chakra-fueled fire was being put out by the cold. No. Naruto saw Hinata-chan suffering. They were going to die if they didn't get warm somehow, and the snow was beginning to pile up inch by inch as the snowfall became more furious. He wasn't going to let it end this way, he had made a promise and he intended to keep it. He acted purely on impulse, there was only one way to get them warm, and he would do anything to keep Hinata-chan safe. He realized that deep down he truly would do anything to keep the lavender-eyed girl safe from harm. It gave him new purpose and strength. Hinata was holding herself, trying desperately to get warm, when Naruto-kun stood up and grabbed his blanket he had given her. He walked over as he put the blanket around his shoulders. She thought he was just trying to get warm when he suddenly reached down and picked her up in his arms, covering both of them. Hinata turned pink at the fact that he was holding her bridal style, both of them draped in the blanket. She realized he was using their closeness and the blanket to keep both of them warm. And he was warm, she was still shivering, and acting out of instinct rather than thought she buried herself against him, wrapping her arms around him and trying to get as close as possible. She realized that they were horizontal and about 100 feet in the air. Naruto-kun was walking up the tree to get away from the snow. She was so cold, he let her snuggle as close as she wanted to him, she needed to get warmer. And they needed to get off the ground before they were buried in the snow, so he began to walk up the tree they had been camped under. When he finally found a branch that was wide enough to sit on without fear of falling off and had enough leaves above it to block most of the snow, he sat down his back to the tree, and was about to put Hinata-chan down as well and give her the blanket when he saw that she was asleep in his arms and curled up against him. She had stopped shaking and was now very warm. Naruto couldn't help himself. He touched her peaceful face lightly with his fingers, brushing back a strand of hair that covered her face, causing her to sigh and snuggle closer against him. He was breathing hard, his heart hammering. What the hell was wrong with him? Hinata-chan was just sleeping. Nothing to get worked up about. He then noticed the blanket had slipped and Hinata-chan was frowning and beginning to shiver in her sleep. Screw it. Naruto pulled the blanket back over them, covering his head with it and making a sort of tent for Hinata-chan. He then wrapped his arms as far as they could go around her, which happened to be farther than all the way, and rested his head against hers, letting her slow breathing and soft heartbeat lull him into a world of dreams. The sun hit her face causing her to open her eyes reluctantly. She had been having the most amazing dream. She then looked up to be confronted by the fact that she was face to face with a very blonde and sleeping ninja, that she was in his arms and they were both completely covered by a blanket. Hinata realized it hadn't been a dream. She snuggled back into her bit of Naruto's shoulder, and was seriously considering going back to sleep when she remembered where she was and why she was there. The Chunin exam, the forest of death. Hinata looked around her and realized that all the snow from last night had melted, and now it was fairly warm actually. It had been a jutsu that was used over the forest. Some surprise. Hinata couldn't get out of Naruto-kun's arms, though she really didn't want to. But she reached up anyway and stroked the blonde's face, her palm lightly brushing the whisker marks, and Naruto-kun, wake up please. He slowly but surely opened his eyes, his sky-blue eyes looking sleepily into hers. She felt her heart skip a beat at how close his face was to hers. Good morning Hinata-chan. Are you feeling okay? She nodded. She was feeling better than okay actually, she was feeling like she was in seventh heaven at the moment. Naruto rubbed one of his eyes sleepily and set her down in front of him. That's good to hear, I was really worried about you last night. He then let out a monster of a yawn and stretched his entire length. Hinata held her breath, she couldn't help but let her eyes wander over his body as he tensed and stretched every muscle. She could feel herself turning very pink all over, and that heat was beginning to spread through her body again. She quickly averted her eyes, embarrassed with herself for staring. Naruto didn't seem to notice though. He stood up and pulled Hinata-chan up with him. Come on. We only got 2 more days to go. We still need to find that other scroll. Here, eat this. He handed her a red pill. It was a soldier pill and pulled one out for himself. Kiba gave them to me before we left for the exam yesterday. He said we might need them. Hinata nodded. With the soldier pill she could go on for 3 days straight without stopping, resting or even eating. After they had eaten their pills and allowed themselves to get used to the feeling of endless energy given by the pills, they jumped into the forest, heading towards the center of the forest, keeping an eye out for any other teams, especially ones that had a sound nin or two in them. It didn't take long. It had only been an hour since they had set off when Hinata spotted activity straight ahead. I found them, Naruto-kun. Naruto looked up in surprise. Which ones are they? Hinata frowned as she made her Byakugan only focus in front of them, effectively increasing its range. It's the sound nin that was paired with the one from the grass village. They still only have one scroll. Naruto grinned. This was it. He was either going to get answers from this follower of Orochimaru or he would defeat him. Either way they needed that scroll. Alright, Hinata-chan. Let's do it. They sped up and began to close the distance between them and the other team. The other team apparently noticed they were being followed soon after they were discovered by Hinata, but Naruto didn't care. He wasn't trying to hide his presence. Hinata and him jumped through some bushes to find themselves in a clearing that was about 50 feet wide. The tree's branches were so long though that they cast the entire area in leafy shade. The 2 nins were already there waiting for them. The grass nin was tall and thin. He had long straight hair pulled up in a ponytail. He wore nondescript robes with a rope belt, and his forehead protector covering his nose and mouth. On his back though was the largest scythe Naruto had ever seen. The blade itself was at least 5 feet long, and as black as night. The sound nin wore gray robes and the customary purple belt often worn by sound nins that served Orochimaru directly. His forehead protector covered his entire head, the metal plate over his eyes, leaving only his nose and mouth exposed. The sound nin spoke. Uzumaki Naruto, I never thought that I would have the pleasure. He sneered. You are wondering why I'm here with my brothers, yes? He had a very deep voice that seemed to echo like he was inside a cave or something. Naruto only glared back at him. He and Hinata-chan had already gone into their fighting stances. Naruto was ready to jump at a moment's notice, but he needed to know why the sound nin was here. Why are you here? Did Orochimaru tell you to come? And if so, where is Sasuke? The sound nin chuckled, a very disturbing sound. Yes, Orochimaru-sama sent us, and yes, I know where the Uchiha child is. He is Orochimaru now. Naruto almost instantly went numb as what he was told began to sink in. No. It was too late. No. He had failed Sasuke. He was already the Snake Sanin's vassal. No. The numbness instantly went away. You're lying. I won't believe it. He now felt anger and rage bubbling inside him. What if it was true though? What if it really was already too late? His anger began to die, being replaced by a sense of hopelessness. When he felt Hinata-chan's hand on his arm, he looked at her with a surprised look. He could feel the concern emanating from her eyes. Why you can't give up, Naruto-kun? Sasuke-san is still out there somewhere. Naruto felt the hopelessness slip away under that pale lavender gaze. She was right, he had made 2 promises, one to find Sasuke, one to always be by Hinata-chan. He intended to keep those promises. This was his nindo, his ninja way. The sound nin saw the look of determination in the blonde ninja's eyes. He grimaced. So you still want to fight, huh? Good. Because Orochimaru-sama's orders were to kill you the first chance we got. That's why me and my brothers are here. Prepare to die, Uzumaki. The grass nin looked calmly at the scene before him. I don't know what your differences are, and frankly I don't really care. He turned to the sound nin. We need the other scroll. They might have it, so let's stop this stupidity and finish this quickly. The sound nin nodded with a wicked grin on his face. I couldn't have said it better myself. And with that they charged. Naruto and Hinata braced themselves. The grass nin came to the front, unhitching his scythe from his back and then swinging it, putting his entire body into it. Black flames erupted from the scythe in an arch that raced towards Naruto and Hinata. Naruto grabbed Hinata and rolled just in time, as the black flames went whizzing by and exploded in the trees about 10 feet behind them. The blast pushed them forwards, causing them to stumble. The sound nin then opened his mouth and screamed. The entire area in front of him was ripped with sonic waves of energy. Naruto jumped in front of Hinata, putting his back to the blast and took it full on. The air rippled with the force of the sonic energy, and Naruto fell forward into Hinata's arms, his back smoking and bloody from the blast. Hinata was afraid he was seriously hurt or worse, dead. But then he moved his head and winked at her. He was okay. She got up. She had to distract them for Naruto-kun. He had a plan. She began to spin the chakra in her palms. The sound nin snorted. Ha! I know all about the Byakugan girl and your Jiyuken. I don't have to worry about your pathetic attacks as long as I'm not in close quarters with you. She glared at them. She hated them. They had hurt Naruto-kun not only physically but emotionally, and they intended to kill him. She was having none of it. The sound nin and his teammate were laughing at her as she stood there glaring at them. She thrust her hands forward, twin blast of blue chakra emanating from her palms. The sound nin stopped laughing. That was it. A little bit of fireworks. The sound nin began to laugh again and turned to his teammate. Go ahead and kill her. I've already finished off the other piece of trash. The grass nin grinned and lunged forward. Except his knee suddenly bent in the wrong direction and he stumbled onto one knee. The sound nin's eyes widened. What the hell? But I thought. Hinata grinned. Don't act like you know who I am. Don't ever underestimate me, she screamed, vaguely aware that was what Naruto-kun always said. The sound nin took a step back, fear apparent on his face, and one of his knees popped and bent in the wrong direction like the grass nin. She had hit them perfectly. Water gathering jutsu. The yells seemed to come from everywhere around them as giant ball of water, 20 feet wide, began to form above their heads. The two nin looked around trying to find out where the voice had come from. Wah. Then the sound nin saw that where the Uzumaki brat had been was no longer occupied. What? But I killed you. There's no way you could have survived that blast. He was screaming at the air. Naruto's voice floated to them from the trees. Never underestimate me. Oil transmutation jutsu. The water ball turned murky and then black. It had turned into a giant floating ball of oil. Naruto suddenly appeared from above, landing in front of Hinata-chan. Grand fireball jutsu. Flames erupted from Naruto's mouth and lit the giant ball of oil on flame. He then turned to the two nins. Trash are we? This is your last chance. Tell me where Sasuke is or I'll destroy you. The sound nin chuckled. I already told you. Sasuke is Orochimaru-sama. Naruto glared furiously. Wrong answer. He then performed at least 20 hand seals in rapid succession, ending with, Tiger, this is my own combo that I came up with. I hope you two like it cause you're about to experience it firsthand. Firestorm of the Armageddon Jutsu. Nothing happened. The sound nin began to laugh. That's it. That's your great combo. Naruto had grabbed Hinata's hand and was running with all his speed. Come on Hinata-chan, we have to get to some cover. The giant fireball began to rumble and the surface began to ripple. The rumble began to grow like 1,000 beating drums until finally it was a deafening roar and the surface was pulsating madly. Naruto pulled them behind a boulder just in time. A tendril of flame shot out of the hovering sphere. It was at least 5 feet wide and swirling like a tornado of flame. It struck the ground, just missing the two injured nins, leaving a crater in the ground that had turned the soil and sand to glass from the intense heat and pressure. The two nins began to clumsily run away. More and more tendrils began to shoot out of the sphere in random directions, coming faster and faster, cutting wide swaths of ash and destruction through the surrounding forest. The tendrils were almost constant now, and the rock which Naruto and Hinata were hiding behind had been blasted several times already. Hinata could see with her Byakugan the two nins trying to escape the flames, but because she had injured their knees they were tiring quickly and having a harder time dodging the mini tornadoes of fire as they came at them faster and faster. Finally one went down, then a split second later the other. They had both been engulfed by the flames, and completely incinerated. The onslaught lasted another 15 minutes before the fire ran out of oil for fuel, and the jutsu finally died down with one last tornado blast into the air. After about 5 minutes of absolute silence, Naruto and Hinata slowly and shakily got up from behind what was left of their shelter and began to walk back to the clearing. Hinata was clinging to Naruto, his arm around her shoulders and his other hand holding her arm. She was frightened. How did you do that, Naruto-kun? Naruto looked down at her and saw the frightened look on her face. He tightened his arms around her, holding her closer. Don't worry, you're safe. Hinata looked up into those sky blue eyes and believed. She smiled weakly and nodded her head. Naruto smiled back. Aro Sennin taught me that it's a forbidden jutsu, and he said that I should only use it when I really had to. I guess it was a little bit of overkill, huh? Hinata nodded meekly. I think it was. It was amazing though, Naruto-kun. Why, you've gotten a lot stronger. Naruto almost looked like a kid again when he grinned at the compliment, except for the fact that he was a lot taller. Thanks, Hinata-chan. Come on. Let's see if we can find that damn earth scroll they had. Those things are supposed to be indestructible. And with that he grabbed her hand and began to lead her around the clearing in search of the scroll. She tightened her grip on his hand and walked beside him as they searched the ground. It didn't take long. Naruto spotted the black scroll among a pile of ashes that made a vague outline of a human. As Naruto slowly pulled the scroll from the ashes and brushed it off with trembling hands, he was hit with what he had just done. He had killed. For the first time in his entire life, he had killed another human being. Hinata saw Naruto-kun stop and tense. Naruto-kun. She watched as Naruto fell to his knees and began to rock back and forth. He was sobbing. The realization that he just took 2 lives for the first time tearing up his insides. He was excited about using his new jutsu, but now he realized what he had done. They may have been out to kill him and he was defending himself, but he had still killed, not once, but twice. They had died by his hands. He had not killed them in one-on-one combat like he always thought he would, but he had destroyed them, completely with a jutsu that could destroy almost anything in its path. Hinata stood horrified. She had never seen Naruto-kun like this. Why? Then the realization came. He had just made his first 2 kills in his entire life. Hinata stood helplessly. What could she do? What could she possibly do to make it better? A strange feeling came over her. She suddenly felt very protective of him. She wanted nothing more than to hold him and protect him from the world. She bent down and put her arms around him. He stiffened for a moment, then wrapped his arms around her, crushing her to him and sobbing into her shoulder. Please, Hinata barely heard his whisper between his choking sobs. What is it, Naruto-kun? I'm here. Don't be afraid anymore. I'm here for you. Naruto's body was racked with his sobbing. Please, please, don't leave me, please. Hinata felt her heart tear at the agony in his voice and what he asked of her. She sat down and cradled him in her arms, holding him close and stroking his face. I'm never going to leave your side, ever. I swear it. Naruto held her tighter, finding peace in her touch. Tsunade turned from the video screen where she had watched Naruto's and Hinata's fight with the grass and sound nin. You taught him those jutsus, Jiraiya. She frowned at him. That jutsu Naruto just did, I've only seen it done once before, and that was done by the 3rd, a long time ago. Jiraiya nodded gravely. Yes, I did. He knows more jutsus than I can put a name to. Everywhere we went during our 3 years, Naruto would find the strongest person there and challenge him to a fight. Jiraiya chuckled to himself. Though it was a bit grim, he lost more often than not in the beginning, and each time he saw a new technique used on him he'd convince the person he challenged to teach him it. He had me teach him almost all the techniques I know, some of them he can't do because they are still too complicated for him, but ones like the Firestorm of the Armageddon jutsu requires very little chakra compared to the amount of damage it can cause, that's why it's a forbidden jutsu. Jiraiya looked Tsunade in the eye, who was overcome by shock. You have to admit he did have use for it, I'm just worried that he'll have to use it more often now. The two former teammates stood in silence watching the video screen as Naruto found the Heaven Scroll and then broke down with the realization of his deed. Tsunade felt a well of concern nearly overwhelm her. Jiraiya heard her sniff and turned to see her wiping tears from her eyes. He's no longer a child anymore, Jiraiya, he's beginning to lose his innocence. Jiraiya smiled knowingly. Ah, that's why you put him with the Hyuga girl, didn't you? She'll keep him alive and well, physically and more importantly, emotionally. Tsunade nodded, smiling a little bit. He's in love with her, I can tell, he just doesn't know it yet. Jiraiya nodded. He's in good hands. He paused for a moment. Oh, and another tidbit about our favorite ninja. Tsunade looked up from the screen questioningly. He's mastered it. Tsunade frowned. Mastered what? Jiraiya smiled. The Rasengan, he's mastered all 9 steps. Tsunade frowned, stunned at this statement, but there's only 8 steps. Jiraiya chuckled at that. He found a 9th. And he can do it. He hasn't used it on anything other than inanimate objects, but I fear he may have to use the full power of the Rasengan sooner than hoped. Tsunade was numbed by this tidbit of news. Amazing, his brother would have been proud. Jiraiya looked up meaningfully. His entire family would have been proud. Tsunade, his entire clan would have been. They stood outside the door to the tower. They hadn't run into any other teams while on their way here. It was the 3rd day. They had camped the night before away from the wreckage that Naruto's jutsu had wrought. They had slept in each other's arms again that night, finding peace and warmth with each other. She was never going to leave him, she had promised it, and like him she intended to keep that promise. That morning they had awoken in each other's arms for the 2nd time in 2 days. I'm sorry, Hinata-chan, about yesterday. I didn't mean to break down like that. They were both still wrapped in the blanket and neither of them had made any move to get up. Hinata touched his face, and looked into his eyes. It's okay, Naruto-kun, really it was. Naruto smiled and hugged her again. Thank you, Hinata-chan, thank you so much, for everything. Hinata couldn't believe it, he was thanking her. No, Naruto-kun. Naruto frowned worriedly down at her. Thank you, for everything. They held each other then, finding a comfort that they had never felt before. It was many minutes before they parted, pink in the face and smiling to themselves, and began to pack up camp. Now here they were, 3 days of trekking through the forest and braving its dangers. You ready, Hinata-chan? Hinata looked up, remembering this morning and turning pink at the thought. Naruto-kun was back to his original self now. He had told her that it was because of her he had been able to make it through. She felt extremely proud at that statement and bit of determination began to form in her chest again. She would never leave him, she would always be there for him whenever he asked. She couldn't help thinking that he had made that exact same promise and that he also was going to keep it. She looked into those beautiful sky blue eyes and found warmth. The only other people who had ever exuded so much care with just a look were her mother and Neji Nisan, ever since he started looking out for her. She smiled one of those smiles that for some reason made Naruto's heart skip a beat and begin to speed up. For the life of him he had no idea why. Why, yes, Naruto-kun, we are ready. And with that she did the bravest thing she could have done. She grabbed his hand and began to lead them inside the tower. Naruto allowed himself to be pulled along, feeling something warm come over him at the touch of Hinata-chan's hand. Tsunade was right, he was in love, he just didn't know it yet. Naruto and Hinata entered the tower. Knowing what to do already, they opened both scrolls to begin the special summoning. There was a small flash of light and an explosion of smoke. As the smoke cleared, Naruto grinned happily. Iruka-sensei. Iruka grinned back at Naruto. Hey. Naruto. Oh, and of course hello to you too, Lady Hinata. Hinata blushed at the title. I'm not a lady, Iruka-sensei. Naruto and Iruka both spoke at the same time. Nonsense. They both looked at each other and began to laugh, causing Hinata to blush even more. Iruka finally stopped laughing. Ah, sadly this the end of the pleasantries. You two are the last to arrive. You worried me for a bit. All the other 9 teams arrived yesterday. Naruto's eyes widened. All 9 teams. Iruka nodded. Yep, it looks like after 3 years we're going to have another preliminary round before the third part of the exam. Alright, come on and follow me, you know where we're going. With that he began to lead them down a hallway into another room, filled with the other 18 genin. It was the same room where the preliminaries were held during Naruto's last Chunin exam. This was where he had defeated Kiba, probably by pure luck. Naruto turned blushed slightly at that memory. He remembered Lee-san saying something about how luck followed the strong. Maybe he was right. Naruto was enjoying his memories of his and Kiba's fight until he noticed Hinata-chan's obvious irritation. She did not have such good memories of this place. Hinata-chan. Hinata looked up at Naruto. That's when she realized they were both still holding hands and began to blush again. Naruto didn't seem to notice her turning pink. Hinata-chan, don't worry, you're a lot stronger now, and with me to cheer you on you'll definitely win. There's no doubt about it. Hinata smiled, and squeezed his hand to let him know that she was okay. She didn't trust her mouth right then. Naruto looked at her seriously for a moment. Just remember that I'm always here. He pointed to the spot he was standing, by her side, and I'm not leaving it. Hinata had to swallow back her tears. This was not the time to cry right now, even if it was out of happiness. They were now standing among the other genin. She could see the 2 sound nin on the other side of the group, farthest away from them. Naruto was looking at them too. She gripped his hand more tightly, feeling him do the same. The 2 sound nin were staring at them as well. They were broken from their staring contest by none other than Tsunade, the 5th Hokage. Jiraiya stood on her right, Kakashi on her left, and the other Junin instructors stood to the side. I am impressed by the numbers that have entered the tower. Not all the teams that can make it here usually make it. I am informed to tell you. Arrow Sennin. Naruto was jumping up and down, apparently not listening to Tsunade. Did you see me kick the shit out of those 2 with that jutsu you taught me? Tsunade was about to yell at Naruto for being rude when Jiraiya jumped up in front of her. Hell yeah, that was so awesome, Naruto. I knew those 2 didn't stand a chance when I saw you use that huge water-gathering jutsu. Jiraiya suddenly went crashing to the floor, sending spider cracks through the cement. He would awaken several hours later with a migraine and one huge lump on the back of his head, luckily though, without a concussion. Naruto noticed Oba-chan's eyebrows twitching and decided then was a good time to shut up. He saw Hinata-chan with her hand over mouth in an attempt to stop smiling. Naruto gently reached out and moved her hand away. I like it when you smile like that, Hinata-chan, you should do it more often. Hinata looked down at her feet and was turning beet red again. She would have twiddled her fingers as well, except in order to do so she would have to remove her hand from Naruto-kun's. From the corner of her eye she could see Naruto-kun blushing too. Tsunade massaged her temples. Now, if there aren't going to be any more interruptions, she glared threateningly at Naruto, causing him to gulp audibly. We can continue. As I was going to say, there are too many teams left, so for the first time in 3 years we will hold a preliminary round before the start of the third exam. We will hold it right now. The display, she pointed at the wall, will tell us who is fighting who. Now everyone up onto the catwalk. As they all came onto the catwalk, Naruto and Hinata were joined by Kakashi-sensei. I'm glad you made it this far, Naruto. You did well during that fight you had in the forest. Naruto puffed up with the compliments. But don't get too. If you don't win the preliminary rounds you won't be able to see my final surprise. Naruto paused at that. Huh. Another one of your stupid surprises. Yeah, well, don't worry about me or Hinata-chan. Nobody can beat us, right, Hinata-chan? Hinata was toeing the ground in front of her. We have grown a lot stronger, Kakashi-sensei. Naruto smiled. See, we're unstoppable. Kakashi just shook his head, smiling secretly to himself. He didn't doubt Naruto's words. The head display rang and the first fight was displayed. It was a double knockout. Everyone was surprised by this, but even more surprised when the second round was also a double knockout. Kakashi raised his eyebrows in mild surprise. 2 double knockouts in a row, interesting. The third fight involved one of the Sound Nin, Zeke, and a Leaf Genin. Naruto watched closely. He wanted to see what these 2 Sound Nin could do. This one was easy to figure out. He defeated the Leaf Genin with what appeared to be blades of sound energy that he could throw. They left terrible gashes in the Leaf Genin's body. He hadn't stood a chance. Naruto flexed his hands and gritted the teeth. It weren't for the fact he would be disqualified, he would have jumped that Sound Nin then and there. He lost his anger as the next fight showed the other Sound Nin, Pulse, fighting a Stone Nin. The Stone Nin could rip up ground with his bare hands and use the rocks as powerful projectiles. But as each rock came at Pulse, they would simply explode about 2 feet away from the Sound Nin. He just stood there with his arms crossed, looking eerily like the calm and collected Gaara of the desert. Suddenly the Stone Nin collapsed, gushing blood from his mouth, nose and ears. Naruto couldn't understand it. How did he do it? Did it have to do with sound? Naruto decided that this Pulse was the strongest of his 3 brothers. In the next 4 fights, those who won were a Leaf Nin who could turn herself into some sort of tree monster that could control plants, a Stone Nin who could cover himself in stone armor making himself nearly invulnerable, 2 Cloud Nins, one who wielded a spear of electricity and the other who channeled electricity through her skin. She just grabbed onto her opponent until he passed out from the electrical shock. Finally, it was Hinata's fight. She was worried at first that she would have had to fight Naruto-kun. She would have forfeited that one before he did so that he had a chance to become a Chunin. She was glad now she wouldn't have to, but she was nervous. The last time she fought here, she was soundly beaten and badly injured by her cousin Neji. She was fighting a genin from the Hidden Mist village. Before she turned to go, Kakashi spoke up. Don't be nervous, Hinata. Just stay focused and you'll define. Naruto spoke up. Kakashi-sensei is right. You can beat him, no prob. Just remember that I'm right here. Now go kick some Misty. Hinata couldn't help but smile at the encouragement. Hinata went down the stairs to the floor. There waiting for her was her opponent. A tall and muscular man. He wore nothing but a pair of black shorts that came to the top of his knees and a pair of sandals with spikes on them. His headband was on his forehead with his dark brown hair done up in spikes. He grinned. Hinata noticed that he had sharpened canines. I like to eat little girls. I had to kill a lot of them so that I could get here, you know. Hinata's heart began to beat faster. He wanted to kill her. Then she heard Naruto-kun's voice. Kick Hishinata-chan. Wipe that ugly smirk off his face. Hinata smiled. Naruto-kun would always be there for her, no matter what. The Mist Nin grimaced at the Naruto's words. Shut up, you ass. You won't be saying that once I'm done with her. He then turned his grin back on Hinata. His grin quickly dropped. She was smiling at him with a dangerous glint in her eye. No girl had looked at him like that before in those eyes. What the hell was up with that? White eyes. Who the hell you think you're smirking at, bitch? Fine, I'll kill you quickly and get this over with. Girls usually looked at him with eyes full of fear, but this one, she looked at him like she planned on turning him into fried bacon. He didn't like it. He sealed and yelled, Hidden Mist Jutsu. The most basic of the Mist Village's techniques, but sometimes one of the most useful. The entire area that Hinata stood in was covered in thick fog. The only visible object to the onlookers was Hinata, but then she too was swallowed up. Hinata couldn't help but smile. He didn't know about her Byakugan and what it could do. She held stock still and silently activated her blood limit. He was coming around behind her hoping to catch her off guard. Hinata waited. Hee hee. The bitch was scared witless. She was just standing there not knowing what to do. He was directly behind her. He was going to finish this quickly. He charged with a kunai in his hand, planning on stabbing her in the back. He thrust forward when she suddenly sidestepped and he stumbled forward. How? He was moving too slow, obviously thinking she couldn't see him. She easily sidestepped his thrust, causing him to stumble forward and exposing the back of his neck. She gathered chakra into her 2 fingertips and slammed them into the back of his neck, just beneath the skull. He fell limply to the ground and the mist disappeared. Wah! What did you do? He was still conscious but not moving. She answered with contempt in her voice, I severed the nerves from your brain to your body, you're paralyzed from the neck down. Oh, and you shouldn't have told me that you enjoyed killing little girls, 'cause I made it permanent. He passed out before he was able to call her a bitch. Winner. Hyuga Hinata. Hyuga smiled at the cheering from Kakashi and Naruto and the other Leaf Genin that were still conscious. She shakily climbed the steps only to stumble into Naruto-kun's arms. Did I do well? Naruto laughed and hugged her. You did awesome, Hinata-chan. Now, it's my turn. Saying that, he let go of Hinata and jumped over the rail. Hinata silently wished him luck. Naruto was confronted by a genin from the hidden sand village. Naruto smiled. So how is that Gaara doing? I haven't talked to him in a while. The sand nin, who was short and wore baggy black clothing that was tied at the waist and joints with white rope, stared blankly at Naruto. That monster is our cage. My parents say he should be disposed of. Naruto's eyes widened at the news. Gaara's already cage. I got to get working harder. Naruto's narrowed though at the other words the boy said. Monster, huh? You don't know anything about Gaara then, 'cause if you did you wouldn't be saying that. The sand nin only looked at him blankly. I don't really care, I'm just going to beat you now so that I can go on to the third part of the exam and become a chunin. Naruto's eyes grew angry. This brat wanted to be a chunin. He acted like he didn't even care. Fine then, you want this over so bad. Then let's do it. Naruto charged, gathering chakra to his hand, Rasengan. He slammed Rasengan into the ground where the sand nin had been, causing a small crater. Shit. He's just as fast as Lee-san. He turned around and charged the sand nin again. This continued on for another 15 minutes, Naruto trying his best to hit the super fast sand nin and never landing a blow. Naruto noticed something though. He stopped for a moment. The sand nin rose a questioning eyebrow. Why don't you try and hit me back? Naruto didn't understand. This kid was faster than him and should have been trying to kick his butt. Matter of fact, Naruto wanted him to attack him so he could use his handcuff jutsu on him like he did to Lee-san, but the sand nin merely evaded him, waiting for the last second to dodge and appear behind him about 10 feet away. The sand nin slowly smiled. Naruto thought it looked kinda creepy. I may be fast, but I'm not very strong. I wouldn't be able to hurt you if I tried. So I just let my opponents tire themselves out and wait until they're too weak to defend themselves before I finish them off. The kid actually chuckled at that. Naruto glared. You're a coward. I can't believe you call yourself shinobi. You can't even stand up for yourself in a one-on-one fight, so you kick your opponent when he's down. You make me sick. The sand nin's smile disappeared. Again, I don't care. Naruto grimaced. Fine. He had a plan. He had used shuriken on the kid already and of course he dodged it. But he noticed he only dodged it at the last second. Naruto ran away from the kid, ran up the wall and jumped into the air. The sand nin only smiled, thinking he was going to attempt another Rasengan. Naruto, however, with his back turned on the sand nin, slipped the Fuma shuriken from his pack, the one Sakura-chan had given him, and opened it. He did some quick seals and whispered something. He did all of this in the span of a second. The sand nin watched as the blonde ninja giant twisted in midair and threw a particularly large shuriken at him. Didn't he know that those kind of attacks were too slow? What an idiot. His eyes widened though when there was a huge shockwave. In the middle of the shuriken's flight there was a giant sonic boom that shook the walls as it instantly sped up past the speed of sound. Because of the speed change it caught the sand nin off guard. He still dodged it, but then the sonic boom hit him, tearing off his right arm and leaving only a bloody stump. Og. The shuriken blasted through the far wall of the room into the open, circled upward, slowing down then coming back through the 30-foot hole it created where it was deftly snatched from the air by Naruto and stored in his pack. Thank you Sasuke. How did you like my sonic shuriken jutsu? You can run around all you want now, you'll die from blood loss though. The sand nin was holding his bloody shoulder and staring at Naruto with wide eyes. He then promptly fell forward onto his face and blacked out. Winner. Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto stood in the middle of the damaged arena as everyone else who had won came down to stand before the Hokage. Naruto hugged Hinata again when she reached him. Hinata noticed that she was quickly getting used to these hugs she was receiving, she hoped he didn't stop giving them. Tsunade stepped down from the dais in order to address the assembled genin. Well done to those who have made it this far, I must say that your combat skills are up to par. But you'll have to show them off again in the third part of the exam. It will be a tournament that will be attended by many lords and almost the entire Leaf Village. It will be held 1 month from now. Tsunade paused for a moment to allow that to sink in. Many of the first-timers were very surprised. Also, those of you who have taken the third part of the exam before fought in one-on-one battles, this time you will be fighting with a partner. There were some cries of objection against this, most of them saying that they had already done the second part of the exam with partners. Tsunade waited patiently. She was pleased to see that Naruto and Hinata were not complaining. There are 8 of you, so 4 teams, Team 1 and 2 will fight, then Team 3 and 4 will fight. The 2 winners of those bouts will fight for first place. Tsunade continued to tell them how they may not become Chunin even if they did win, and because one partner became Chunin didn't mean the other did as well. Now I will list off the teams. Team 1, Zeke and Pulse of the Sound Village. Tsunade was surprised. Naruto and Hinata were on Team 4. These were also picked randomly, but she didn't tell them that. It looks like Naruto and Hinata had pure luck on their side this time. Tsunade smiled at that before she addressed the genin again. Now you have 1 month to train and relax, we'll see you at the stadium then. Dismissed. As everyone turned to go, Kakashi noticed the Junin instructor for the sound pulling his students outside away from the rest of the group. He turned to Naruto and Hinata. You two go ahead, I've got to check out something. Naruto and Hinata both nodded and continued on their way. Kakashi turned to where the sound nins had disappeared and followed them. He found them in a small clearing of trees. He hid himself in some bushes attempting to stay as quiet as possible. No, you will wait until the tournament to complete your mission. That was the Junin instructor. One of the students complained, but it would be so much easier if we killed him now, when he least expected it. The Junin was furious. I said no, Zeke. That is an order from the Snake Sanin himself. You will wait until the tournament. It will be expected and draw less attention when you finally kill Uzumaki Naruto. Now go. Last time I checked you two had a month to train, now get out of my sight. Kakashi waited until the 2 genin left before revealing himself. The Junin seemed unsurprised. Ah, copy Ninja Kakashi, listening in on our little conversation. Too bad you can't do anything about it, since killing is perfectly legal during the tournament. Kakashi noticed that this sound shinobi was dressed like any other sound nin, gray robes and a purple rope belt tied in a bow at the back, with 2 katanas strapped to his back. Kakashi frowned. Yes, too bad, but I must say I do hold a grudge against anyone who targets my students specifically. And to tell you the truth, that's usually enough for me to kill indiscriminately. Kakashi pushed up the left side of his forehead protector, revealing the scarred eye that held his Sharingan. It's enough for me to kill you and violate the rules, to tell you the truth. The sound nin smirked. There will be no fighting today, Hatake Kakashi. Don't worry though, you and I will battle soon enough. Remember my name, I am Duseto, and I look forward to killing you personally. And with that he disappeared. Kakashi didn't bother chasing after Duseto. If we are going to fight soon, might as well wait until then. At least Naruto already knows about it, he'll be prepared. Kakashi turned to go, wondering what abilities this new adversary had. and what would happen in his new book, given personally to him by none other than Jiraiya-sama, Return to Come Paradise. Come on Hinata-chan. One more, please. Naruto was trying his best to look pathetic, knowing that Hinata-chan seemed to do what he wanted when he asked nicely. Hinata couldn't help but smile. Naruto-kun, I'm tired, you know you have a lot more energy than me. Naruto stuck out his lip, just one more. Please. Hinata rolled her eyes and smiled, shaking her head. She knew she was going to be too tired to do anything else the rest of the day. One more, promise. Naruto-kun grinned and stood up. He had gotten down on his knees, and held his hand over his heart. I promise. Hinata rolled her eyes again. She knew her muscles were going to give her hell for this. Neji watched from the sidelines. Hinata and Naruto were sparring in the courtyard. This had to be their 6th match in a row so far. Hinata was getting tired, but because of her Byakugan she dodged or blocked almost all the blows. Almost. She was hit a couple of times, but Neji noticed that Naruto didn't hit hard like he would against someone else, even if it was just a sparring match. Matter of fact, he barely touched her, just pushing with his fist or foot enough to let her know she was hit, and she did the same back. Neji smiled to himself. Even now, only 4 days away from the tournament, they would never risk hurting each other. Neji was impressed. Hinata had improved immensely the past 3.5 weeks. He was seeing her in action for the first time. She and Naruto appeared to be two blurs moving across the sand of Naruto's courtyard. No one had seen the two since they came back from the first 2 parts of the exam, for the day after they immediately began to train together. In order to keep anybody from spying on them, they trained exclusively at Naruto's. Hinata would get up at 6 a.m. to go over to Naruto's and would come back late at night so tired she would take a shower and go directly to bed. Neji never got a chance to talk to her. No one did. Naruto locked his gates when Hinata came over to keep out unwanted eyes. Neji was suspicious at first, until he realized that even if Hinata had the courage to do such things, she was in love and it would be her choice, not his, and he had grown to trust Naruto. He wasn't the only one watching them though. Tenten and Lee stood by, while Shikamaru, Choji, Kiba and Shino watched from the other side of the courtyard. Ino and Sakura sat on the doorsteps of the main building whispering to each other as Naruto and Hinata had their mock battle. Finally they stopped. Hinata had lost this time, making it 3-3, at tie. She realized that Naruto-kun didn't enjoy losing and had wanted one more chance. If she had won he would have given in. He was a pretty good sport for someone who was so competitive. They were both breathing hard and sweaty. Naruto-kun peeled off his shirt and called out to Lee-san to see if he wanted to spar. Lee-san ended up taking his shirt off too and jumping off the boardwalk, facing Naruto. Naruto looked over his shoulder at Hinata. You go ahead and take your shower. After I'm done messing around with Lee-san I'll take mine and we can all hang out for a bit. He smiled and turned back to Lee-san. Hinata just stared dumbly. For the past 3 weeks she had only seen Naruto-kun without his shirt on a couple of times. Each time her heart sped up and that heat started to spread through her body. She turned around quickly and headed for the main building where she would take her shower in one of the guest bedrooms on the 2nd floor. She had actually moved some of her stuff into that room, because it was more convenient than having to bring things back and forth from her house to Naruto-kun's. Naruto was the one who had convinced her to do it. It was a pretty good idea, she had to admit. After all, she spent most of her past days at Naruto-kun's. She only used her house to take a shower right before bed and to sleep. She ate all her meals at Naruto's, and even when they weren't training they did what Naruto-kun liked to call their hangout session. Naruto had commented on their first day back how Tsunade-sama had said to relax as well as train, and so they shouldn't train all day. Hinata had taken it at first that she was being dismissed and she should go home and rest, and was about to go when Naruto had said she should eat at his house. He had plenty of ramen for the both of them and they could just sit and talk. Hinata was terrified of thought. What was she going to talk about with him? She wanted to though, so she had agreed. And now for the past 6 weeks, they would take breaks at meal time, sit down in the living room and just, well, talk. It was hard at first. Hinata couldn't think of anything to talk about, so Naruto would just talk about their training at first, and then he would ask her how life was like living in a clan household. He would ask her things like what did she like to do, or what were her favorite things, like color and food. She couldn't help but answer and stutter all the answers at that. But finally, after the first week, she had worked up enough courage to ask him what his favorite things were. He had answered immediately, going into detail, especially about ramen. He then said at last that he enjoyed being around her. That's when she had just said screw it and just started talking about herself. At first she was afraid that Naruto-kun didn't want to hear, but he would ask questions, prompting her to go on. And he did the same. Hinata noticed that gradually, but surely, in those past 3.5 weeks she had lost her stutter when she talked to him. She also met his eyes more often when she talked to him, and she didn't twiddle her fingers when he was around. She began to realize that Naruto-kun not only enjoyed talking to her, but he wanted to talk to her. Just talk and learn as much as possible about her, and so she did the same because she felt that's what she wanted. She really wanted to learn as much about him as well though, so it didn't take much for her to work up her courage and ask him things about himself. She almost never stuttered around him now, except when he did things like hug her or take off his shirt. She couldn't help it. Whenever he did those sort of things she would feel her entire body heat up, and her heart beat faster, causing her to slip back into her stutter for a moment. She wondered sometimes what she would do if she just let that strange heat take over, but she never got far, embarrassed by what it could mean. Naruto-kun had started calling it their hangout sessions ever since the first day. One day, about 2.5 weeks in, Hinata had gotten enough courage to ask Naruto-kun what she thought was a personal question. He had already asked her some pretty personal ones, but considered it different if she asked one. It was night, and the full moon was out. Hinata was going to go home in about a half an hour. She and Naruto-kun were sitting on the sand in his courtyard, under the stars. Hinata had been wanting to ask him, because she had told him about her personal life, like what her family was really like and how hard it had been living up to her father's expectations all the time. But she had never asked him about what his personal life was like. She didn't want to seem like she was intruding, but she felt like she had to know this. They had been sitting under the stars already for almost an hour when she finally brought herself to open her mouth and ask. Naruto-kun. Naruto turned to look down at her. Yeah, Hinata-chan. She breathed in deeply. She had taken the first step. Best not to back off now. What is it like, living alone? Naruto turned his face away to hide expression from Hinata. Why do you want to know that for? He asked softly. Hinata was shocked. He had never asked her a reason before. He had just simply answered, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have asked. Naruto turned to look at her. She was shocked at the amount of pain he showed on his face. It's no that Hinata-chan, I just need to know why you're asking. Hinata took another breath. Because I feel like I need to know. I don't know, sorry. Naruto shook his head. No, it's okay, I'll tell you, because I think I need to also. Hinata waited patiently. Was his life really that bad? Naruto finally spoke. They all hate me, you know. Hinata's eyes widened. Who? Naruto sighed. Your father, and almost every elder and adult in this village. It's true, I can feel their hatred. Especially when they all look at me, their eyes, they're like ice. Naruto took a deep breath. When I was little, I lived in an orphanage. They always told me that someday someone would come and be my parents, someday I would have a family. Naruto was swallowing now and having a hard time talking. Hinata reached out, but didn't touch him, afraid he would stop. They never came, Hinata-chan. I watched as every kid in the orphanage was chosen for adoption until I was the only one left. I would try my best and be nice to the adults who came by, but they always gave me those looks, those cold looks, and their children mirrored them. They started acting the same way, ignoring me when I came out to play, telling me to go away when I wanted to go with them to the candy store. Even my caretakers tried their best to ignore me when they could. I usually had to get my own food, because my nannies would forget, and I ate in the back of the kitchen because no one would let me sit with them. Finally, my 12th birthday came. No one celebrates it, you know. It was the day the Kyuubi attacked. And the third Hokage gave me my own apartment and provided me with money so I could buy myself food and clothes. Naruto sniffed and rubbed at something in his eyes. I wasn't as strong as you thought I am, Hinata-chan. I only acted tough. I told you this at the training posts that one day. I know, but it was true. I was afraid that everyone at school would treat me like I was at the orphanage, that I acted like I did to make sure that people at least acknowledge the fact that I was there. I didn't have any friends, not until Iruka-sensei, that is. Then all of a sudden I started to get friends. I was suddenly not alone anymore. I wondered, it was like having a family, if Iruka-sensei was like a father, and Sasuke, if he was like a brother. Naruto was rubbing his eyes constantly now and was shaking. Sakura-chan, I wanted her as my girlfriend because she was one of the hardest to get. She was interested in Sasuke. But now I wonder if she's more of a sister now than anything else. Everybody else was there to help me too, and especially you, Hinata-chan. Hinata jerked at the mention of her name. She was so engrossed in his words. Me. She squeaked. Yeah, you made me feel strong again when we talked at the training posts that one day, and then when we started training for the first time, you gave me another purpose. And now, I know more about you than anybody else. You're the first person to tell me so much about themselves. I feel like I know you best out of everybody in the whole world. Hinata couldn't believe it. His life had so much pain in it. He then turned to her, smiling weakly. His eyes were red and tears ran down his cheeks. You probably are the person that I know best, Hinata-chan. I don't know what I would have done if it weren't for all of you. I don't know what I would have done if I was still alone. Hinata, abandoning everything her mind was telling her, reached up and cradled his face and then held his head to her shoulder, hugging him like she did that one day in the forest of death. Naruto couldn't hold back anymore. He began to cry into her shoulder without restraint, spilling out his pain for the stars, the moon, and for her to see. After he had finally calmed down a bit, he had just kept his head where it was, which Hinata was grateful for. She didn't want him to move. Hinata-chan. Hinata looked down at him and smiled softly. Yes. Naruto looked up so their eyes were meeting. I don't know why I'm saying this, other than I think I need to. I can't stop thinking about you. Hinata's heart nearly stopped, and suddenly was beating at 1,000,000 beats a second. I don't know why, but for some reason when I think of you, or when you smile or when we hug, I'm really, really happy. And that's only one of the feelings. I can't even start to figure out the other ones, but I can definitely tell you that I'm happy when you're around. I don't ever plan on leaving your side, as long as you don't want me to, and I hope that you do the same, because I don't want you to leave. Hinata could feel the tears starting to form. Why, yes, of course I don't want you to leave, and I promised you that I wouldn't leave your side either, remember? And I don't want to leave your side, Naruto-kun. Naruto smiled up at her. Thank you again, Hinata-chan. You always seem to know what to say to make me happy. Hinata smiled, forcing back the tears she was about to shed. Naruto-kun. Naruto looked up again. Yeah. I love you, Naruto-kun, is what she wanted to say. Nothing. Just, you make me happy too. Naruto frowned for a moment, but then smiled warmly. That's good. I'm glad I make you happy, to Hinata-chan. Naruto decided if she didn't want to tell him, then that was okay. Don't you have to go home? Hinata looked down at him. I can stay for a bit longer. Naruto smiled and leaned on her shoulder. Hinata breathed deeply, trying to keep that heat from overcoming her. She didn't get home until much later that night. Hinata smiled at those memories as she walked to the main building in her much-needed shower. She and Naruto had grown closer, especially after their conversation a week ago. They had shared secrets, some she had not even told Neji Nisan before. She never wanted this to end. She wanted to be by Naruto-kun until the day she died. She hoped his promise stayed strong, cause she knew hers would. As she walked past Ino and Sakura on the steps, they got up and followed her inside. Hey Hinata-chan, wait up. Hinata turned around, draping her towel over her shoulders. Why yes. She still stuttered when she talked to other people other than Naruto-kun. Ino walked so she was standing right in front of her and Sakura circled behind her. She was taller than both of them, but they made her seem very small all of a sudden. Ino grinned evilly. So, I hear you and Naruto have been hanging out almost non-stop now. Hinata just nodded her head, eyes wide and a little frightened. Sakura giggled behind her. You see, Sakura and I were just wondering, have you two kissed yet? Hinata almost choked from the coughing she had. What makes you say that? Sakura shrugged. Oh well, you two, alone for the past, month now? If you include his first week back. I was just beginning to think that you two were more than just friends, cause I've never seen just friends hug so much. Hinata was stunned. No. It's not like that. Not at all. Ino raised an eyebrow or smiled. Are you saying that you don't want it to be like that? No. I mean, I don't know. Ino raised both eyebrows. Sakura did the same. I see now, you like him, a lot, and you can't bring yourself to tell him. Hinata stared mutely at the ground in front of her, knowing she was caught and preparing herself for the reasons they would tell her not to chase after him. Instead, both girls squealed and began hugging Hinata. Oh my god. We're so happy for you, Hinata-chan. Hinata felt numb. Huh. Sakura held Hinata's shoulders so she could look her in the eye. Ino and I have been talking, and we think you two are perfect for each other. You go girl. I would have said yuck about you liking him 3 years ago when I didn't know him, but now, especially after he somehow got that hot bod of his, you deserve him. Hinata couldn't speak for a moment, she was stuttering so badly. But Naruto-kun, he doesn't like me like that. Sakura and Ino both rolled their eyes as one. Ino spoke up. Trust me Hinata, he likes you, he just doesn't know it yet. All you need to do is tell him how you feel about him and find that he likes you too. Trust me, I can see it. She smiled that evil smile again. Now you go wash up. We don't want to leave our Naruto-kun waiting, do we? Hinata turned pink. Sakura came up and smiled at her warmly. You and Naruto will make such a good couple. If you ever need our help with knocking some sense into him, then let us know. And with that, both gave the lavender-eyed girl warm hugs before they turned to go back out into the courtyard and watch Lee and Naruto's match. Hinata walked numbly to her room, and into the shower, thinking about everything that Sakura and Ino had said to her. Halfway through her shower she was smiling to herself and humming wordlessly. After Naruto finished with his sparring, which ended up with Neji, Kiba and Choji joining in as well, they all took showers and then everyone was treated to ramen as they sat in the living room talking about things like the Chunin exam, and this year's class of Genin. Hinata was unusually silent, due to the fact that she was blushing so much from the expressions and hand gestures Sakura and Ino threw at her when no one else was looking. The next 3 days passed in much the same way, with everyone spending as much time together as possible at Naruto's house and Hinata and Naruto training. When everyone went home for the night, Hinata would stay late and have their hangout session with Naruto-kun. They mostly talked about the upcoming tournament, but they talked about themselves as well when they veered off topic. The past month was all happy memories for both Naruto and Hinata. They stood on the special balcony where the fighters would stand and wait for their match. Each standing next to their partner that they had been training with for last month. Hinata and Naruto held hands, like they did in the tower 1 month ago, reassuring each other with occasional squeezes of the hand. The stadium was full to bursting. People sat on the walls and steps so they could see the fights, for 3 cages had come from their countries to witness the tournament. In addition to the Hokage, there was the Tsuchikage of the Hidden Stone, the Raikage of the hidden cloud, and Gara, the Cage of the hidden sand. No one knew why he was there since no Sand Genin had made it this far, but he was one of the judges and he had brought a good portion of the sand village with him. It was time to begin. The referee and announcer was none other than Hitaki Kakashi himself. Teams 1 and 2, step forward. Naruto and Hinata watched as the Leaf and Cloud Nin jumped down off the balcony followed by the two Sound Nin, Zeke and Pulse. Kakashi raised his hand when both teams were in their right places, then he made a chopping motion and yelled, "Begin." The battle was literally over in a matter of moments. The Leaf Genin transformed into her tree form and tried to capture Zeke with her roots. Zeke's sound blades however cut through her roots and consequently her as well. She fell and transformed back to normal, except her normal form had deep and bloody gashes in her side. At the same time the Cloud Nin had thrown his spear of lightning at Pulse, the spear discharged 5 feet away from Pulse, and suddenly the Cloud Nin went down, bleeding from his orifices. The fight was over before it had hardly begun. Winners: Zeke and Pulse. Kakashi kept a wary eye on the two Sound Nins as they walked back to the balcony. The medics quickly rushed out and gathered the two fallen Nins. The crowd was cheering and booing of course, some liking the fight, others thinking it too short, and others thinking it too brutal. Teams 3 and 4, step forward. Hinata and Naruto climbed down and went to their spot, the big stone Nin and the Cloud Kunoichi standing across from them. The stone Nin looked like Choji, except he was completely bald and his eyes were dark and hard, he wore nothing but his shorts. The Cloud Nin had long silvery hair, just like her twin brother in the previous fight. She wore short shorts and a tube top, exposing as much of her skin as possible and still being discreet. Kakashi yelled, "Begin." The stone Nin stepped forward. "Don't worry, I'll handle this, it's just a little girl and some blonde surfer." The Cloud Nin glared at him and screamed, "That wasn't the plan, you idiot." The stone Nin shrugged, "I say save the plan for that Zeke and Pulse, they're definitely stronger than these two." And with that he performed several hand seals and yelled at the top of his deep voice, "Impenetrable armor of rock and stone." And then he charged. As he ran earth and rock ripped itself from the ground and flew towards him, attaching to his skin and melding to his body, so that he looked like he was wearing medieval armor that covered him from head to foot, even his face was covered, leaving only his eyes showing. Large pieces of jagged rock jutted out of his shoulders and joints, and particularly sharp rocks protruded from his fists and feet. As he moved the ground shook from his increased weight, but even though he couldn't run as fast his momentum was building. The Cloud Nin behind him was yelling at him to stop and get his back there. Hinata had an idea pop into her head like light bulb. She jumped in front of a startled Naruto, right in the path of the charging wall of rock. "Hinata-chan, what are you doing?" Hinata looked over her shoulder at Naruto. Her Byakugan was activated. "Use your Rasengan." Naruto frowned looking at the closing figure of stone. "I don't even think a Rasengan will stop that." Hinata smiled. "I just need you to stop him from crushing us in my arms. I can get through that armor." Naruto smiled and nodded, instantly catching on. As one they began to gather and spin chakra into their palms. Hinata had to get the angle perfect for her plan to work. It had only been a couple of seconds since the stone Nin began to charge, another second and he was going to crush him. Right when he was on top of them, Naruto screamed, "Rasengan!" and slammed it into the stone Nin's armored chest. Just above Hinata's head. It wasn't getting through, but it had definitely stopped him in his tracks. The stone Nin grunted in surprise as the Rasengan began to dig in and tear up the outer layer of his armor. Hinata slammed both her palms into the chest of the armored stone Nin and screamed, "Juyuken arrows!" The stone Nin's eyes widened in surprise, and he paused as spasms ran through his body. He fell to his knees, his armor crumbling off of him as he spat up blood and collapsed unconscious. The Cloud Nin smiled, "Idiot, oh well, I can handle both of you anyway, I know I can beat you in close quarters. Prepare to receive ass-kicking." She then took a step forward and paused as a spasm ran through her body. Hinata and Naruto smiled, "Nice shot, Hinata-chan." Two birds with one stone, awesome. The Cloud Nin had enough time to look up in surprise as she too spat up blood and passed out. Winners. Naruto and Hinata. Hinata and Naruto hugged, Naruto picking her up and twirling her around. Kakashi couldn't help smile at the sight. Neji couldn't help smiling either. Hinata had told him that she had a secret technique that Naruto had taught her and that he would have to wait and see until the tournament. She can use Juyuken at a distance, amazing. Team 1. Zeke and Pulse. Step forward. Hinata and Naruto quickly became somber as the two sound nins placed themselves across from them. They both wore the gray robes and purple rope belts of the sound nin. Zeke was of mid-height and he wore a classic ninja mask that had an armored mouth plate and his forehead protector rested upon his head at a slight angle. He had two gauntlets on that Naruto noticed was where his sound blades came from. Pulse was completely bald, his forehead protector tied to his upper forearm, his eyes were the creepiest, pure black, with no visible iris or pupil. Team 1 and Team 4, the final round. Begin. Kakashi dropped his hand and both sides instantly exploded into movement. Hinata and Naruto split up and ran sideways as Zeke threw his sonic blades at them, tearing apart the ground and walls where he missed. Both Naruto and Hinata circled back around so that they flanked the two standing sound nins. Hinata on the side with Zeke who decided it was easier to focus his blades on Hinata, Naruto on Pulse's side who stood there staring at his charge, his arms crossed. Hinata easily dodged all the blades easily thanks to her Byakugan and training with Naruto, except when she was nearly on him he caught her with a graze to the ankle she went down, hard. Naruto jumped into the air and slammed his Rasengan towards the waiting figure at Pulse when he suddenly hit a solid wall of nothing, that not only stopped him but pushed him back several feet before disappearing. Naruto suddenly realized why he was called Pulse. He could send out pulses of invisible but tangible chakra from every point of his body in a sphere. The wall apparently stopped everything. Hinata looked up to see Zeke standing over her. Bitch. He kicked her in the stomach. He then reached up his hand and formed a sound blade. I'm going to enjoy cutting you up, little girl. And once I'm done with you, guess what? I'm going to personally hand your peeled face to that blonde freak over there right before I rip out his heart. He began to cackle madly as he raised his arm higher for the final strike. Something snapped inside Hinata. She jumped up ignoring the pain in her ankle, surprising Zeke and grabbing his sound blade with both of her hands as he brought it down. She had gathered chakra into her hands to keep them from being cut. Zeke began to increase the power to his blade, Hinata did likewise. They stood there increasing their chakra trying to overwhelm the other. Wind started to whip their clothes and small pebbles and loose soil began to float around them. Zeke smiled, he was winning, Hinata was running out of chakra. Zeke pushed her to her knees and began pressing his blade to her face. No. Hinata completely tapped into the armbands that Naruto-kun had given her and screamed as all the chakra of the armbands rushed into her and into hands in an instant. Ah ha ha ah ha ha. They both screamed, Hinata's sounding inhuman and infused with the voice of someone else. The ground was ripping up around them and they were starting their own crater as their chakra tore up the ground around them. Hinata stood up, and pushed all her chakra into the sound nin's blade. Naruto was blinded by a flash of light and whipped his head around at the sound of the explosion behind Pulse. Hinata-chan. Naruto ran around Pulse, completely ignoring him. Pulse did likewise, hardly caring what happened to his teammate. Hinata-chan. She was on the ground on her side. Naruto kneeled and rolled her over. Her eyes were closed and blood was leaking from her eyes and mouth. Her hands were badly burned on the palms and her shoulder was a bloody mess. Hinata-chan. Wake up, please. Hinata let out a soft groan. Hinata-chan. Please. He shook her gently. Please, Hinata-chan. He squeezed his eyes shut, unable to stop the tears from getting through. Nah. Naruto-kun. Naruto snapped open his eyes. Hinata-chan. You're alright. Hinata let out a cough that spewed forth blood onto her jacket. Hinata-chan. You are okay, right? Hinata smiled up at him and gently shook her head. I'm sorry na Naruto-kun, she coughed again, bringing forth more of the precious life fluid. Naruto picked her up gently and cradled her. Hinata-chan, no, you can't, he was sobbing now. Hinata put a hand on his face. I'm sorry Naruto-kun, that I couldn't keep my promise, I tried. Naruto's face contorted in agony. No. You can't leave me. You promised. You have to keep your promises. Hinata smiled gently, keeping her hand on his face. I don't think I can this time end Naruto-kun. I'm so sorry. Naruto couldn't bear it. His insides were being torn apart. No. Don't be sorry. Just stay with me, please. Hinata began to cry. I'm sorry Naruto. I'm dying, I can feel it. Naruto sobbed and choked. No. You can't die on me Hinata-chan. You can't leave me alone. Hinata smiled through her tears. I'll always be with you. She sobbed again before speaking. Naruto-kun. Naruto bent closer. What it is it Hinata-chan? Hinata smiled and choked on a sob. Remember that night we talked under the stars? Naruto nodded slowly. Remember I wanted to tell you something. Naruto was crying. Please tell me Hinata-chan, he had to keep her talking. Naruto-kun, I love you. I love you with all my heart. Naruto suddenly felt himself pulled into a kiss. His eyes went wide for a moment at what was happening, but then, he closed his eyes and kissed her back. Hinata sighed and fell back, a small smile on her lips. I love you, Naruto-kun. She closed her eyes and went limp in his arms. Hinata-chan. Naruto set her down, tore off her jacket and pressed his ear against her chest. Please. Thump. She was alive. There was still a chance. Naruto looked over his shoulder pleadingly. Kakashi got the message. Time out. Medics, get your asses over here. 2 critically injured. The medics rushed out and gathered up both genins. Naruto grabbed the nearest medic and glared in his face while pointing one finger at the Hinata's retreating stretcher. If she dies, I'm going to hunt you down and kill you. Do you understand me? The medic gulped and nodded his head. He then ran towards as he was shoved by Naruto to follow. Kakashi turned to the crowd. In the event of a double KO, time is called. Both incapacitated combatants are taken off the field and the fight resumes as a one-on-one match. Man, I hope they don't find out I'm lying. Tsunade grinned at Kakashi's words. She wasn't going to say anything. She turned to the other cages. She hated dressing up in this doohickey robe, but custom required it. He's perfectly correct. I wrote the rules myself. The other cages nodded their heads. Gaara as well, who gave Tsunade a sideways glance though. Note to self, write down new rule in exam rule book in case anyone wants to check. Besides, she thought it was a perfect rule, even though it was made up on the spot. Kakashi turned to the remaining 2 combatants. You will now fight one-on-one to determine the winner. Begin. Naruto whipped his head over his shoulder and shot a glare at Pulse. Why do you want me dead? Naruto's voice was almost a whisper, a deadly whisper. Pulse sighed. It does not matter. I'm going to kill you anyway. No one has ever beaten me. Naruto growled. Where the is Sasuke? Again Pulse smirked, a frightening thing since his onyx black eyes remained devoid of any emotion. You don't know. I guess you wouldn't since there hasn't been any shinobi out looking for him in over 6 months. Naruto's eyes widened. He didn't want to believe it, but he did. He shot a glare up at where Oba-chan was sitting. He would deal with that later. He turned back to Pulse. Never beaten, huh? Well, apparently you've never fought me before. Pulse smiled, showing teeth. I'm going to enjoy killing you Uzumaki Naruto, and then after I'm done with you, I'm going to go and watch the little wench die. I'll laugh as I watch that piece of trash's pathetic and useless life slip away. And he did laugh, a high-pitched cackle that clearly showed that he was not sane. Something forcefully and audibly cracked inside of Naruto. Give me your power, you stupid fox. Give me all you got. Energy began to emanate from Naruto's body, then speeding up and turning his chakra red. Wind began to gust off of Naruto's body and small pebbles began to shake and then rise off of the ground. His eyes turned blood red and cat-like, His whisker marks thickened and lengthened, his nails lengthened into claws and his canines lengthened into 1-inch fangs. He looked up at Pulse and glared, growling between his clenched fangs. Pulse stopped laughing, eyes going wide. What the hell was this? What the hell was he doing that he changed physically like that and his chakra jumped so high? Naruto wasn't done though. The chakra began to bubble from his skin, being too much for his body to contain. The blood-red chakra eerily took on the form of a fox that overlapped with Naruto's body. Naruto began to form the Rasengan in his right hand. She loves me. Pulse began to panic for the first time in his life. He had never seen so much chakra, not even coming from a cage. You fool. That didn't work before and it won't work again. Naruto growled, we'll see. His voice sounding like many voices speaking together and growling animals all at once. Naruto charged and jumped into the air. She loves me. Pulse's heart sped up at the oncoming monster. He was expected to kill this. No. He had never been beaten before. He wasn't going to lose now. He gathered all of his chakra and let it out in one powerful pulse. He was going to tear him to shreds in one hit. Naruto slammed the Rasengan into the pulse wall. He wasn't pushed back though, he was just frozen there, his Rasengan only 2 feet away from Pulse's face. How? Pulse couldn't believe it, he was fighting his barrier. You can't get past my barrier, no matter how hard you try, freak. Naruto narrowed his eyes and grunted with the strain of staying in one spot. Then it looks like I'll have to bring it to the next level then, don't I? Pulse's eyes widened. What? Naruto's Rasengan suddenly started to stretch and warp around his entire arm up to his shoulder, making his arm look like a tornado. That's level 4. Naruto's hand came another foot towards Pulse's face. Pulse was sweating and panicking. No way. Naruto growled. Looks like level 4 isn't enough. Guess what, pal? You get to see level 5 of my Rasengan. Pulse screamed. No. As the whirlwind of chakra around Naruto's shoulder began to widen and fan out, making it wide at his shoulder and a point at his hand, so that the Rasengan looked like a giant whirling drill. Naruto began to push. Pulse's barrier shuddered. Naruto saw his chance and gave one final push with all of his might. She loves me. The barrier shattered as the Rasengan slammed into Pulse's face, tearing it to shreds in seconds and causing his skull to explode. Naruto kneeled over the decapitated form of Pulse as the Kyuubi chakra slowly receded into his body. The crowd was silent. Kakashi came over and put his hand on Naruto's shoulder. You had to. He was going to kill you anyway. Naruto looked up into his sensei's eye. I know, Kakashi-sensei, but I wanted to this time it was personal. Kakashi took Naruto's hand and raised it above his head, pulling Naruto up. Tournament winner. Uzumaki Naruto. The entire crowd exploded into cheering. Naruto stared numbly at them, and saw Tsunade. He frowned and began to march towards her, then he froze. Hinata-chan. Naruto decided he would handle Oba-chan later. He had to see Hinata-chan, now. He ran off the stadium field and out of the stadium. He ran all the way to the hospital, nearly 2 miles away. He had used up a lot of chakra and stamina, and so he was winded when he entered the hospital. Naruto went up to the front desk. Where is Hyuga Hinata's room, please? The doctor behind the desk shifted through some papers. You're going to have to wait in line like everyone else. He looked up from his papers and his eyes widened in fear. He was the medic from the field that Naruto had threatened. Naruto's eyes narrowed dangerously. You want to rephrase that? The doctor gulped, and pointed down the hall. Your second right, 34B, he said shakily. Naruto turned and ran down the hall at full speed, almost running into several doctors. He stopped at 34B where there was a female doctor checking off a notebook. How is she? The doctor looked up. It was Sakura. Sakura-chan. How is Hinata-chan? Sakura looked down both hallways before answering. She almost died, Naruto. If she had gotten here a few seconds later she would have died, and I do mean only a few seconds. When I attempted to heal her, I didn't think it would do any good. She had lost too much blood and her heart was torn down the middle. Naruto grimaced, closing his eyes tight. Why, you said almost died, right? Sakura nodded, smiling. It was like my chakra activated something. Her armbands, the ones you gave her, started to glow red, and right before my eyes she healed within minutes. I can't explain it, it's a miracle. She's sleeping right now, I'll let you in, even though I'm not supposed to. Naruto lunged forward and hugged Sakura, burying his face into her shoulder. Thank you, Sakura-chan, thank you so much. Sakura hugged him back. Get in there, you big goof, before someone sees you. Naruto pulled away, tears streaming down his face as he entered the room. There lay Hinata, with an IV in one arm and a monitor showing her regular heartbeat, her eyes closed, breathing regularly. Naruto walked slowly towards the edge of the bed and collapsed to his knees when he got there. Grabbing her hand gently, he began to cry. She was all right, thank God she was going to be okay. He looked up into her face, and realized how beautiful it was. Something inside of him slid into place, like the last piece of a puzzle that he had been looking for. He loved her. He loves her with all his heart, and her would stay by her side forever. Not because he promised it, or even because she wanted him to, but because he loved her. Naruto slowly, ever so slowly, rose up and kissed her, letting his heart be known. Hinata opened her eyes. She was in heaven. She had to be, because she didn't feel any pain. Matter of fact, she felt great. She felt physically better than she had, well, ever. Plus there was a soft light that illuminated everything, and she seemed to be laying on something very soft. Hinata could only think that it was a cloud. And oh yes, one more thing, Naruto-kun was kissing her. That proved that she had to be in heaven now. No way would such an impossibility happen in real life, and it definitely wasn't a dream, because everything felt so real. So she had definitely died and gone to heaven. It was nice, but it wasn't real. She suddenly felt a great sadness. She had died and left Naruto-kun, and now heaven was trying to make her feel better by having what looked like Naruto-kun kiss her as if he really did love her. Tears began to stream down her face as she wished she had told him sooner that she loved him. Naruto saw Hinata-chan's eyes open, and as tears began to stream down her face he jerked back, thinking he had done something terribly wrong. Hinata-chan, are you okay? Hinata raised her hand in a shooing motion. Go away, you're not real, I just want to be alone right now, thank you for trying to cheer me up though. Naruto frowned. What the hell do you not mean I'm real? I just ran from the stadium all the way to this hospital which some idiot decided to build 2 miles away from a place where people got seriously hurt, and I threatened a doctor to get to your room, and have Sakura-chan let me sneak in, even though she could get in big trouble, and I kiss you, because I'm worried sick and happy that you're alive, and because I think I'm in love with you. And you tell me I'm not real. Naruto took Hinata's hand in his own, and sat on the bed next to her. I definitely feel real to me, Hinata-chan, and that kiss you gave me when you said you loved me, that definitely felt real too. Oh God, it wasn't heaven or even her best dream ever, because she realized all of a sudden that the light was the noonday sun coming through the window next to her bed, and the soft thing she was on that she thought was a cloud was actually a very soft hospital bed. She was in a hospital room, and she was very awake and very much alive. Hinata shrieked and grabbed her covers and dove under them, curling in the fetal position, trying to get away as fast as she could. She definitely wasn't going to fall for something that would never happen and then find out that it was all a lie. She was going to go to sleep, and when she woke up, she would either be in heaven or somehow alive in a world where everything was normal. Naruto-kun did not love her. She knew that he never would, even though she dreamed about it. She wasn't about to be disappointed when she found out that this wasn't real. Naruto jumped when Hinata-chan shrieked, and smiled slowly. This was probably a shock for her. She probably wasn't expecting to still be alive. Naruto now understood why Hinata-chan had told him that he wasn't real. He was going to have to deal with this with some finesse. Well, he was in love with her, and she had told him she was in love with him, right? Oh well, might as well. Naruto got under the covers with her so that their faces were only a couple inches away from each other. He couldn't help but smile broadly at Hinata's shocked face. Geez, Jiraiya has really started to rub off on me. Hinata froze. He had just gotten underneath the covers with her. She finally came to this conclusion after about a minute of staring into those sky blue eyes. She still wasn't ready to admit this was real though, it was still too surreal. Naruto saw the doubt in her eyes still there. Looks like this is calling for drastic measures. Naruto reached out and placed his hand on her cheek, cradling it gently. Are you still positive that I'm not real? Hinata nodded, not taking her wide eyes from his face. Naruto smiled nervously and slowly moved forward the last few inches. He paused for a moment but Hinata didn't move away, and so he kissed her, just pressing his lips softly against her trembling ones. Hinata was definitely more awake now than she was before. She slowly closed her eyes and allowed herself to be kissed, thinking that maybe, just maybe, this was real. Naruto pulled back and she opened her eyes to meet his. His cheeks were pink and he was smiling a little nervously. She suddenly felt the heat rise in her chest and abdomen and spread through her limbs, making her feel like she was blushing all over. She probably was. Naruto tried his best to smile reassuringly. He didn't think it was working out though. Do you still think I'm not real now? Hinata nodded her head again, but this time very slowly. Naruto moved forward again, and this time was met halfway, making his eyes go wide with surprise for a moment. But then he smiled, and closed his eyes again, feeling Hinata-chan's lips against his. What the hell was she doing? Of course she knew he was real after he pulled away from the first kiss. But she was tired, and somehow that heat in her body had taken over, maybe she had let it. And so she had pretty much asked him for another kiss. This time though she felt herself move forward and meet him halfway, kissing him back. And time just ceased to exist for her. It was several moments before they retreated from each other, just a little breathless. Hinata looked into those beautiful eyes, thinking that they were as vast as the sky and could swallow her in an instant if she allowed herself to fall in. She realized she was about to before she stopped herself. This is real, isn't it? I am alive, and I'm not dreaming. Naruto grinned. This is definitely not a dream and definitely real, and thank God that, yes, you are alive. Hinata hesitated for a moment, and what I said to you when I was hurt, I meant it. Naruto smiled fully. Good, because I meant it to when I said that I think I'm in love with you. Hinata could feel the tears coming up, but she didn't stop them. This wasn't heaven, this was heaven on earth. Naruto began to panic. Hinata-chan. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. Hinata had begun to giggle. I thought it was okay, Naruto-kun, to cry when you were really happy. Naruto couldn't help but let his own tears well up as Hinata climbed into his arms and hugged him, rubbing her cheek against his and sighing, I love you Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto hugged her back, letting his relief overflow through him, and I love you Hyuga Hinata. It was several minutes later before Hinata spoke up again, Naruto-kun. Naruto grunted, HM. Hinata hesitated, going pink at the thoughts going through her head, you're under the covers with me Naruto-kun, what if someone came in? Naruto turned beet red seconds before sitting up and throwing the covers off of them. That's when he realized Hinata-chan was wearing one of those patient slip-ons, the ones that you didn't wear any underwear underneath. Naruto stood up blushing uncontrollably and stammering an apology. Hinata was confused for a moment until she saw herself uncovered. She squeaked and quickly pulled the blankets up to her chest. It's okay Naruto-kun, you can turn around now. Naruto peeked over his shoulder before turning all the way around and breathing deeply. He thought he was in for a serious beating, the kind that Ero Sennin usually received. Naruto looked around for a chair, but Hinata hesitantly patted the mattress where he had been sitting before he dived under the covers with her, indicating he could sit there. Naruto sat down, smiling and scratching the back of his head. Sorry Hinata-chan, I didn't really think before I did that. I shouldn't have. You probably think I'm like Ero Sennin now. Hinata-chan, however, simply reached out, cupped his face and pulled him to her, lips meeting. She pulled away and smiled at him. Naruto closed his eyes and breathed deeply. He could definitely get used to this sort of thing. I guess I'll take that as you're not angry at me, he said rather dreamily. All this still seemed slightly surreal him too. He wouldn't want it any other way. Naruto opened his eyes and smiled, feeling the warmth spread through him as he watched Hinata-chan smile and blush a little. He hugged her, and they held each other there for a moment before he pulled away. He still kept his hands around hers though. I've got tons to tell you after you decided to take your nap. Hinata smiled and rolled her eyes at that. I'm assuming you won. Naruto nodded enthusiastically, and proceeded to tell her everything about his match with Pulse. Kakashi stood on the roof of the hospital. Good thing he had decided to follow Naruto when he decided to run off, for across from him was Duseto. Kakashi didn't think it was a coincidence. He was tall as him, he wore the gray-robed and purple belt common among all sound nins, and he wore a face mask that resembled a skull with sharp teeth and purple markings. You can't have him, Duseto. If you want him, you have to get through me first. And just to let it you know, it will over my dead and cold body. Duseto smirked. Very well, as you wish, copy ninja. And with that he charged at Kakashi. Kakashi met him halfway. They began to circle each other, giving and blocking blows so fast it would have seemed a blur to the normal onlooker. It was almost like a dance, a very deadly dance, where one misstep could spell defeat. Twisting and turning, dodging and blocking, using any convenient surface of the body in order to land a blow. Kakashi hadn't fought like this in a long time. It was exhilarating. After several minutes though, Duseto apparently decided that it was time to get serious. He jumped back from one of Kakashi's kicks and landed about 20 feet away. Kakashi reached up and pulled up his forehead protector, exposing his Sharingan. Duseto smirked again. I already know the secret of the Sharingan, Kakashi. In order to avoid its power, all I have to do is not look you in the eye. Simple enough for me since most jutsus don't require eye contact. Duseto performed hand seals and screamed, Tornado Beast of Thunder Jutsu. Kakashi's eyes widened at the number of hand seals Duseto used and how fast he did them. His Sharingan was just able to keep up, at least he knew how to do it now. What looked like a small tornado ripped up from the roof they were standing on right in front of Duseto. It then proceeded to wrap itself around him and began to crackle with electricity, creating a swirling vortex of wind and lightning around its creator. The head of the tornado thing rested on Duseto's shoulder so that the opening in the top faced Kakashi, almost like he was about to play a tuba or sousaphone. Kakashi's eyes widened. Shit, he knew what was going to happen as a ball of electrical energy began to form in the mouth of the tornado. Kakashi grabbed his wrist and quickly began to pump chakra into his hand, until it began to crackle with energy, except this lightning was blue, and composed entirely of chakra, a whole lot of chakra. He hadn't done this but once, but circumstances seemed to call for it. The ball of lightning suddenly fired at Kakashi. He was ready though. Reikiri. Kakashi swung his chakra-infused hand, colliding with that of the ball of lightning. He seemed to struggle for a moment against the impact of the thunder missile, but then completed his swing, splitting the ball of electricity in two and sending both pieces hurtling into the air, where they safely winked out of existence. Duseto's eyes widened. What the hell was that? Kakashi glared at Naruto's potential killer. That was the lightning edge, the Reikiri, also called the Chidori. Kakashi sighed. I guess I should stop fooling around too. With that, Kakashi closed his right eye so he was glaring at Duseto with just the Sharingan. Duseto laughed. Ha, I already told you, fool. I know how the Sharingan works. You can't defeat me by using it. Kakashi smiled slowly, causing Duseto to falter in his laughter. I've been training my Sharingan for 3 years, ever since I fought Uchiha Itachi. What makes you think this is the same Sharingan you've heard about? Duseto stopped laughing. What the hell are you talking about, copy ninja? Kakashi just kept his Sharingan focused on Duseto. It means, you Nimrod, that I don't need to copy you in order to defeat you. After I get rid of your jutsu, I'm going to force you to tell me where Sasuke is, and what Orochimaru has done with him. Duseto started laughing again. You can't hurt me, Kakashi. As long as this vortex surrounds me, you'll have to pierce it with your Chidori. And I'll just keep you dancing with more thunder missiles. Ha! Duseto suddenly stopped laughing as his jutsu faded around him. Wah! What the? Kakashi smiled dangerously. I just stopped your chakra flow using my Sharingan, or should I say my Menchikyu Sharingan. Duseto looked up to see Kakashi's Sharingan had changed. It wasn't like the one that Uchiha Brat had. Duseto just made a big mistake. Duseto collapsed to his knees, clutching his stomach and breathing hard. Kakashi had just forced him to feel his innards torn out for 72 hours straight, even though in the real world no time had really passed at all. Kakashi was breathing a little heavily though. He had used the Menchikyu twice in one day. Not a good idea, he mustn't show it though. Tell me all you know about Sasuke or else I'll do it again and again and again, until you tell me what I want to hear. Kakashi hoped he didn't hear the bluff. He really wasn't sure if he could do it again without causing himself to pass out. Duseto, however, curled in on himself and began to tell Kakashi everything he knew, from the fact that he wore women's underwear once, to all he knew about Sasuke and Orochimaru. Naruto had just finished telling Hinata about the fight with Pulse. He left out the parts about him accessing the Kyuubi chakra though. So I pretty much kicked hiss after everything that happened. Hinata smiled. That was like him to brag about a fight. The only ones he never did brag about were his ones with Gaara and Sasuke. He told her all about those when they were training. He was still holding her hands, and she was so happy. It would mean so much more now when they hugged and held hands. Naruto's good humor faded though. If it wasn't for the fact that you were hurt so bad, and that you told me that you loved me, I don't think I would have been able to beat him. It was true, he had to use a level 5 Rasengan while in the weakest stage of his Kyuubi form. If it wasn't for the emotion he was feeling then, he wouldn't have been able to defeat Pulse. Hinata smiled and blushed at his words. He was saying that it was because of her love that he won. She squeezed his hand to let him know she understood. He hugged her again. Even now, knowing he loved her, she didn't think she would ever get used to him hugging her and holding her hand. It sent her heartbeat skipping along. And that wasn't even mentioning kissing. She was afraid she might lose control of her body if the kissing became any more than just their lips touching. Hinata sighed in his embrace, then remembered something. Naruto-kun. Shouldn't you go talk to the Hokage? You should find out why no one's looking for Sasuke anymore. Naruto pulled away, his head hanging. I know why they aren't searching for him anymore, Hinata-chan. He's probably already the snake bastard's vassal. But that doesn't mean they should have given up though. Naruto sighed. I do want to talk to her, Hinata-chan, but I don't want to leave your side yet. Naruto found himself embraced by Hinata-chan. That's probably the sweetest thing you said to me today, except that you love me of course, but I'll be okay. I promise, I'll wait for you to come back. Naruto hesitated for a moment until Hinata pushed him playfully, go. You big blonde goof. Hinata giggled at her own words and turned a little pink. Naruto couldn't help himself. He leaned over and kissed her, then ran out the door yelling over his shoulder that he'd be back soon. Hinata had stopped laughing, and instead lied down sighing and hoping this dream never ended. Kakashi's eyes went wide at what Duseto had told him. If what you say is true, I can't let you go and tell Orochimaru that we know now. Duseto had other plans though. He made sure he didn't look into Kakashi's eye. I don't think so. Duseto slammed his hand into the ground, summoning forth that vortex of wind and thunder that surrounded him. Kakashi held up his arms to block the spray of sand and dirt that had gathered on the roof. Through slit eyes, Kakashi could see Duseto create a hole in the ceiling and watched as a limp and unconscious figure rose through the hole into Duseto's arms. Kakashi recognized the face mask and the gauntlets. It was Zeke, the Genin sound nin that Hinata had defeated. Using the vortex as some sort of springboard, Duseto launched himself into the air, shooting a thunder missile over his shoulder at Kakashi, forcing him to use the Reikiri again. After the dust settled and the vortex disappeared, Duseto and Zeke were nowhere to be found. Shit. He had to tell the Hokage right away about this. She would decide whether to tell Naruto. Kakashi jumped off the roof of the hospital and made his way to Tsunade-sama's office as fast as he could. Naruto barged into the office to find Kakashi-sensei and Oba-chan conversing with intense whispers. They both stopped and looked at him as he entered. Naruto didn't bother announcing himself. He just walked past Tsunade and Kakashi and sat in the one of the chairs facing her desk. You have some explaining to do. Tsunade sighed. She didn't have to ask. She already knew what Naruto wanted to talk about. She had heard what Pulse had said to him about Sasuke. She turned to Kakashi. Thank you, Kakashi, you're dismissed. Kakashi bowed quickly and left the office just as quickly, not wanting to get caught in the oncoming storm. Tsunade walked slowly around Naruto and sat in her chair. I know what you want to talk to me about, Naruto, and I know that every reason I give you is not going to be enough to tell how sorry I am that I wasn't able to save him. I know that to you, none my reasons are good enough, and I know that in your opinion we should still be searching for Sasuke, even if he was Orochimaru's vassal. Tsunade braced herself. You can yell at me now if you wish. Naruto breathed in deeply and Tsunade squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for the screaming to begin. You're right. Tsunade's eyes popped open so fast they hurt. Come again. Naruto sighed. I think I can already figure out most of your reasons why you aren't looking for Sasuke, especially since he probably already is Orochimaru's vassal, and it's pointless to waste needed ninja effort in a futile search. I can also guess why you didn't tell me right away. Because of the Chunin exam, I would have been angry and distracted. You were also right in assuming that I think you should be looking for him still, even if he is no longer the Sasuke I know. Tsunade couldn't believe it. Naruto had just said all of that in a calm and measured voice as if he had been thinking about it for ages. You've been talking to Hinata, haven't you? Naruto shrugged. Yeah, while I was visiting her in the hospital I ranted and raved about how angry I was. When I calmed down, she was able to get me to think about it at a different angle. Naruto turned pink for some reason and was staring off into space with a small smile on his lips. Tsunade smiled to herself. That girl really was something. She was probably the only one that could get Naruto to see things with a little more reason than normal. She was confused by Naruto's lack of focus for a moment until she realized what it was. She told you, didn't she? Naruto looked up surprised by Tsunade's intuition, but nodded slowly anyway. Yeah, she told me she loved me when Zeke had hurt her pretty bad. She told me because she was about to die and because dying was scarier than talking to me, she was able to finally get enough courage to tell me. After she did, it was like, I don't know, everything was foggy and mixed up when I thought about her and my feelings for her, and now everything is clear and makes a whole lot more sense. Tsunade nodded, then sighed dramatically. Ah, young love, how I envy thee. Naruto frowned. You know, you're lucky I'm not that mad at you, yet. So don't push it. Tsunade couldn't help smiling though. I wish the both of you the best of luck. You're going to need it. Naruto nodded then and stood up to go. I just wanted to let you know how I felt about it and all, and that, I understand and I forgive you, it wasn't your fault that he's gone. He turned and headed towards the door. Tsunade couldn't help it. Naruto, get back here and sit down. I have something to tell you. Naruto slowly went back to his seat, frowning and wondering what was going on. Tsunade sighed. He deserves to know. Sasuke isn't Orochimaru's vassal yet, we still have 3 years. Naruto gaped. What? Then why the hell aren't you looking for him? Tsunade stood up and started yelling back. Because I just heard about it, you little brat. Kakashi just got the information out of the sound ninjunin. Now sit the hell down before I make you. Naruto sat down as if a lead weight were in his butt. Why isn't Sasuke Orochimaru's vassal yet? Tsunade sat down. Apparently the sound nin was very forthcoming. Orochimaru was out on a diplomatic mission, probably to gain the alliance of another country when he was attacked by Itachi and his Akatsuki partner. Orochimaru either doesn't know why, or just isn't saying anything to his minions, but he barely made it back alive. It was only a week before he would have made the body transfer into Sasuke. But Sasuke was nowhere to be found. Apparently my old teammate is having a hard time controlling your old teammate. Anyway, Orochimaru had to transfer into a different body, which means Naruto jumped up with a big smile on his face. 3 more years to find Sasuke and that snake bastard so I can kick his ass. Naruto started jumping up and down, whooping at the top of his lungs. Tsunade sighed though. You're not going after him though, Naruto. Naruto stopped jumping. What? Tsunade rubbed her temples. This was going to be bad. I said you're not going after him, and before you start screaming at me I'm going to tell you why. First, Itachi and the rest of the Akatsuki are after you, we don't know why. Second, we now know that Orochimaru is after you as well, which we do know why. You cannot go running off on missions that will bring you into enemy territory and risk you ending up like Sasuke, or worse, dead. You need to be protected at all costs, so that you can survive long enough to find Sasuke, and how did you put it? Kick that snake bastard's ass, right? Naruto reluctantly swallowed what he was about to say, or yell actually. Oba-chan had a point, a very good point. Damn it. He loved Hinata-chan, he knew that now, but did she have to put the idea of looking at things from different angles into his head? Naruto sighed and sat back down in his chair, slumping a little and hanging his head. He was beat, he knew it. There were other ninja who were better at searching, and if they needed him when they found out where Sasuke is, they could always send for him and Sakura-chan. Tsunade raised her eyebrows, shocked at Naruto's silence and surrender. What the hell had Hinata done to him to calm him down so much? Tsunade reached across the desk and grabbed his hand, giving it a gentle squeeze and letting him know that she understood. I know you want to go after him, but before finding Sasuke, your first priority should be making sure you're still around to help find him, so I'm sending you away for a while, Naruto. Naruto looked up. Away? How far? And how long is a little while? He may not be able to look for Sasuke, but that didn't mean he had to like it. Tsunade leaned back. I'm sending you to a place that only Jiraiya and I know about. We call it the Tree House, kind of as a code name for it. It's a place of refuge for me and Jiraiya while we were traveling all over the place, either together or on our own. He's going to bring you there, and I'm going to be sending a retinue of guards in order to help protect you. Just because Jiraiya and I are the only ones who know about it doesn't mean no one will find you, and with the people looking for you, Naruto, you need the added protection. I don't care how much stronger you've gotten. And how long. As long as it takes to handle this Akatsuki situation. Once that's resolved, you can help with finding that snake bastard. Tsunade waited patiently, allowing that to sink in. Naruto thought about it for several minutes before looking up. Who are my bodyguards? Tsunade sat back up and pulled a file from under her desk. Everyone here is someone you already know. Naruto raised his eyebrows in interest. Tsunade started to list them off. Hyuga Neji, Rock Lee and Tenten, they're all Junin now, and Neji is one of the best Byakugan masters we have. Lee is second in taijutsu only to Guy, and Tenten has become quite the weapons master. There is also Sakura as well. She's almost as good at healing and fighting as I am. After all I taught her, it would be good to have some extra muscle and a medic on hand. Those are your guards, not too many but not too little. We want you to be protected well, but we don't want to attract any attention. They've all been notified and are ready to leave within the week. Jiraiya will be there for the trip to the tree house and act as your guide. He'll also be my messenger, dropping in every once in a while to check on things. Naruto nodded, but looked up. I agree with the choices, plus they're all my friends, but I want Hinata-chan on that list too. Tsunade gave a mild surprised look. Why, may I ask? Naruto spoke with absolute certainty and determination. Because she can use the Byakugan too. Plus I taught her the Jiyuken arrow, and if I'm in a fight I wouldn't want anyone else by my side more than I'd want her to be, and I promised her that I would never leave her side and she promised me the same, and we intend to keep our promises no matter what, and I love her. Naruto was standing now and bracing himself for an argument. Tsunade nodded. All right, she can go. Naruto gaped, mouth hanging wide open. But on one condition, Naruto, you have to ask her first and bring her here so she can tell me that she agreed, just to be safe. Naruto smiled. Okay, I know she'll agree. Naruto paused though, but her father, I know he won't agree. You've got to talk to him. He won't listen to me. He hates me. I don't know what I've done to him, but I know part of it's because of the Kyuubi sealed inside of me, and if he finds out how I feel about Hinata-chan he'll never let her go. Tsunade sighed, and struggled with herself for a bit. He was 16, he should know. Naruto, sit down again please. Naruto sat down automatically, probably because Tsunade had just said please nicely. Tsunade breathed in deeply, prepping herself for what might come. Ever since you left 3 years ago, I've spent a lot of my time in the basement of this building, looking through all the archives and files. I was looking for some information on something that I thought would be important to you. Sadly, everything I found, though informative, only fills one folder. Tsunade pulled out a folder from a locked drawer in her desk and handed it to Naruto. There was a large red spiral on the front of the manila folder. Naruto looked up. What is this? Tsunade looked seriously into his eyes for a moment before giving her answer. You're 16 now, Naruto. I've decided that you're old enough to know about your clan and family. Naruto froze, staring wide-eyed at Tsunade. I thought I didn't have a family. Tsunade nodded. You don't have a family, they're all dead. Naruto hung his head. Then why should I want to know about them? Tsunade got up, walked around her desk and sat in the chair next to Naruto. She opened the folder onto his lap. On the front page was a picture of someone Naruto had seen before. That's the fourth Hokage. Tsunade nodded slowly. That's your older brother Naruto. Naruto whipped his face towards Tsunade, obvious confusion and even a little bit of fear at what he was about to learn showing on his face. Tsunade smiled reassuringly and began to tell Naruto about his family. You are the last of the Uzumaki clan, Naruto, just as Sasuke is the last Uchiha. The Uzumakis were one of the 3 most powerful clans in Konoha, next in power to the Hyugas and the Uchihas. You're living in the old clan house that belonged to your family. And as you can see, your family crest was the red spiral. Your brother was a prodigy, and came up with the body flicker technique, which is said only an Uzumaki could perform. It's why he was known as the Yellow Flash, blonde hair and able to appear anywhere, anytime. I never knew your brother's name, and I didn't find any files on it. When I met him he was already Hokage and everyone called him Yondaime. Anyway, the day the Kyuubi attacked, it was literally unstoppable. Your brother came up with the plan to stop it though. He would make a sacrifice in order to seal the beast inside a child who, as he grew older, would eventually merge with the Kyuubi chakra. There were only 2 problems. He needed a child, and the Kyuubi was so powerful that the required sacrifice had to be huge in proportion. Tsunade paused for a moment to allow that to sink in before continuing. Your entire clan Naruto was in a state of decline at the time. There were no Uzumaki children for some reason. Your brother was the youngest Uzumaki. Until you were born, of course. Apparently they thought you were a miracle and a chance at bringing back the clan to its original prosperity. It was only a day later that the Kyuubi attacked, and your entire clan, Naruto, it says here, all 123 of them, including your brother, sacrificed themselves in order to create the seal on your stomach and bind the Kyuubi into it. They believed that because you were young, you were the only chance for the Uzumaki clan to survive, and because of the sacrifice, you would be looked upon as a hero. It didn't turn out that way. Most of the adults grew to hate the Uzumaki name. They believed such a sacrifice should have destroyed the Kyuubi, not seal it so it might escape in one way or another. And so they hated you, believing you would allow the Kyuubi to escape, or when you fully merged with its chakra you would become the Kyuubi itself. Because of the decree the third Hokage set down, none of the children knew about you, or even heard of the Uzumaki clan. The Sandaime had a feeling that this was how the populace would react. I know it's not rational how they acted, Naruto, but that's the way people are. Your brother was known as a hero among the children, but the adults secretly loathed him, because they believed he had cursed them, not helped them. It took many long minutes for Naruto to absorb that. I guess that's why Hiashi hates me so much. Not only am I the vassal for the Kyuubi, but because I'm an Uzumaki and the fourth's younger brother. He said the part of being the younger brother of the fourth with a bit of wonder in his voice, almost like what he was saying wasn't real. Tsunade grinned a little. Actually, Naruto. Naruto looked up with a questioning look. Hiashi hates the Uzumakis for an entirely different reason, or at least before the Kyuubi incident. Remember when I told you your clan was one of the three most powerful? Naruto nodded. Well, duh, Hyugas and the Uchihas didn't get along very well because they were competing for power. What makes you think the Hyugas and Uzumakis got along while the clan existed? Naruto nodded his head in agreement. That would make sense, but then he frowned. But the Uchihas and the Hyugas were rivals because of their blood limits. Why would my clan be considered a threat? Naruto noticed the smile and glint in Oba-chan's eye. Whoa. Hold on just 1 second. You are not saying that I. Tsunade nodded her head enthusiastically. Ooh, yes I am. You Naruto have an advanced bloodline limit. And a very powerful one at that, because the records mention that even though all three clans were competing against each other, the Uzumakis seemed to be on top more often than not. Naruto just sat there, stunned and numb. He couldn't believe it. Not only did he have a clan and family, but his brother was the fourth Hokage and he had a blood limit. Naruto suddenly became very dizzy and fell out of his chair. Tsunade got down and put a steadying hand on him. She waited a minute before asking, "You okay?" Naruto nodded. Just thought I was going to throw up for a moment. I'm better now though, thanks. Tsunade stood up and sat back down at her desk, and waited for Naruto to stand back up and sit down. The Hyugas are born with the ability to use the Byakugan, and the Uchihas were usually able to use the Sharingan when they hit puberty. Your clan however had to wait until they were adults. The youngest on record to get full use of your blood limit was your brother at age 16. Naruto's head was reeling from all the information he just received. He struggled to clear his mind. What is my blood limit? Tsunade shrugged. Doesn't say, other than it's a dujutsu, an eye blood limit like the Sharingan and Byakugan. Apparently dujutsus are extremely rare and powerful. And Konoha is unique due to the fact that we used to have three clans that had advanced bloodlines that involved their eyes. It does say that your bloodline limit was called the Zensegan, and apparently your brother said you had to have use of the Zensegan in order to use the body flicker jutsu. There were some other jutsus unique to your blood limit, just like all advanced bloodlines have, but it didn't say. Tsunade pulled out a three-pronged kunai with a strange seal carved into the handle and handed it to Naruto. Here, this is what your brother used to perform the body flicker jutsu. Maybe someday you can figure out how he did it. Tsunade then helped Naruto up and shooed him out of the room. There, you have your folder and the only remaining shuriken that your brother used. I hope you're happy. Remember to bring Hinata here, and don't worry, I'll talk to Hiashi. He'll have to do as I say. I am the Hokage after all. Now go. I think someone is waiting for you in the hospital. Naruto turned around and hugged Oba-chan, sniffing back his tears. Thank you so much. I don't know how to thank you for all of this. Tsunade held him so she could look into his eyes. Forgiving me about Sasuke and about not telling you all of this sooner should be enough, I think. Naruto smiled, tears leaving trails down his cheeks, and hugged Tsunade. Forgiven. And then he turned around and ran. Hinata was waiting for him after all, and he had so much to tell her. Then he stopped down one hallway. He couldn't tell her about his family sacrificing themselves. Then he would have to tell her about the Kyuubi inside of him. He would just tell her that they all died battling the Kyuubi. He could tell her that who his brother was at least. It was close enough to the truth, but it hurt lying like that. Still, he didn't want Hinata to hate him. He didn't think he could bear her hating him. He quickly perked up again though. Wait until Hinata-chan finds out I have blood limit like hers. The Zensegan, this is so cool. I wonder what it does. Hinata opened her eyes to find her father entering her room. Father. I did it. The judges voted that Naruto and I were eligible to become Chunin. I was able to do it. Hiyashi though merely looked at her. That's when she noticed that he was clenching his jaw so hard his entire face was turning pale. Able to do what exactly? He said menacingly. Hinata's eyes widened. Why was father angry? Didn't she do what he always wanted of her? Father. You have dishonored me again. Hinata was shocked. What? Hiyashi continued as if he didn't hear. You have dishonored me. How to expect me to congratulate you when you enter the exam without the family crest and become a Chunin without the family crest, and you expect me to honor you? What did you expect? You wanted me to restore your position as heir. You have lost all hopes of that. Hinata couldn't understand what was going on. Tears began to crawl down her cheeks. But father. Why you said I could take part of the Chunin exam? Hiyashi glared. Hinata could literally hear him grinding his teeth. You should not have agreed. You would have gained some respect from me if you had declined and stayed home and practiced your Jiyuken. You dishonored me. Not only did you not wear the family crest, you lost. Again. No self-respecting Hyuga would allow themselves to be beaten so badly. And worse, you use an unknown technique to defeat your opponent. Where did you learn how to do that? Jiyuken was not meant to be thrown around like some toy. Hinata was sobbing now, miserable with herself for failing, again. Naruto-kun taught me it. Hiyashi's eyes widened in outrage, and very slowly he asked, you allowed yourself to be not only partnered with that lowlife, but you let yourself be taught by a piece of trash. And worse, you used that Uzumaki's trash technique. Allowing him to pervert the Jiyuken. How can you call yourself a Hyuga when you allow yourself to be surrounded by scum like that Uzumaki trash? Hinata exploded. He is not trash. He is the most wonderful, kind, sensitive and strongest person I know. And I love him. Hiyashi was speechless with anger. Starting the day you get out of this hospital, you will not leave the household for any reason, you will train your Jiyuken every day, and starting today you are forbidden to go anywhere near that Uzumaki brat. No exceptions. With that Hyuga Hiyashi stormed out of the room and slammed the door. Outside the room, he grabbed the nearest doctor. I am the head of the Hyuga clan. You will guard this door from any man who happens to have blonde hair and blue eyes and calls himself Uzumaki Naruto. The doctor was panicking. But Hiyashi tightened his grip. You will do as I say or else. Understood. The doctor numbly nodded his head. Seeing that Hiyashi turned and stalked out of the hospital, Naruto ran all the way to Hinata's room only to be stopped by a doctor. Sorry, on Lord Hyuga Hiyashi's command, no one is allowed to enter unless they're a doctor. Naruto recognized the little man. It was the same medic he had threatened at the stadium and had tried to stop him at the front desk not too long ago. Naruto narrowed his eyes dangerously and began to methodically crack his knuckles. You were saying. He growled the words only inches from the doctor's face. The doctor was shaking and beginning to sweat. Why did he have to get involved with the temperamental ninjas? SSSSS sure. What Hiyashi-sama doesn't know won't hurt him, right? Naruto smiled menacingly. Right. The doctor scrambled as fast as he could out of the way. At least he would be able to check on his patient now. That sound shinobi, Zeke was his name. Naruto could hear crying inside. Damn that Hiyashi. Naruto opened the door and walked to Hinata's bed. She had her face in her hands and was shaking with her loud sobbing. Naruto touched her hand. Hinata-chan. Hinata flinched at his touch, but when she heard his voice she threw herself at him without looking, crying into his shoulder. Naruto wrapped his arms around her and held her tight. It was about an hour before Hinata had calmed down enough to tell him what happened. You're not going to listen to him, are you? Hinata hung her head and hid her face. not knowing what her answer was. Naruto frowned determinedly. Look, Hinata-chan, and he proceeded to tell Hinata everything about Sasuke and the fact that he was going away, including who his bodyguards were and that he wanted her with. Hinata began to shake her head. But father, he will never. Naruto frowned and gently cupped Hinata's face, facing her towards him so she couldn't look away. Look, Hinata-chan, this isn't about what your father wants, or about pleasing him. From what I gather, I don't think you could please him no matter how hard you try. One failure seems to be enough for him to condemn anyone for eternity. This isn't about him, this is about you and what you want. Hinata-chan, Oba-chan already said that if you agree she'll make it an order that you go. Hiyashi can't refuse that. That is, if you want to go. Hinata nodded vigorously. Of course I want to go, Naruto-kun. I don't want to leave your side ever. But father, he will never forgive me. Naruto frowned with frustration, but he didn't let it take over. As calmly as he could, he looked into those beautiful lavender eyes, willing her to understand. Sometimes Hinata-chan, you have to stop worrying what other people think, and think about what you want, and then do it. I made a promise to you, and I'm not breaking it, ever. It took Hinata a moment to realize what he was saying. Naruto-kun. You can't stay. I love you, but I can't be by your side if you die. Naruto nodded solemnly. That's true, but I'd rather die by your side than die knowing you weren't there with me. Hinata was speechless and so she began to cry. How did he do that? Make her so happy and yet so sad at the same time. Gods, she loved him so much. Naruto could still see some doubt though. Fine, if reasoning won't work then I'll have to get drastic. I am not leaving her behind. Naruto pulled Hinata-chan's face toward him and kissed her. This time though, instead of just the light brushing of lips, he pushed gently so that he was kissing her bottom lip and their lips were fully pressed against each other. Hinata could feel herself melting. She went limp in his arms so that he was the only thing holding her up. The heat was incredible. She had slid a hand behind her head, and it was taking all her control not to grab his hair and pull him into an even deeper kiss. Naruto pulled away after a very long moment, leaving Hinata-chan blinking rapidly and gasping. Naruto raised an eyebrow in question. Su. Hinata nodded her head very slowly, and smiled, letting all those thoughts of her father come back to her like they did the day Naruto-kun had asked her to partake in the Chunin exam. Hinata suddenly became dizzy and fell into Naruto-kun's arms. Any more kisses like that, she would have done anything he asked of her. She hugged him, feeling his arms tighten around her, and sighed. She would be leaving with Naruto-kun in a week and she wouldn't have to worry about clan life or her father's anger. It would just be her, Naruto-kun, Neji-Nisan and friends, and they could be gone for a year. Or even more. It was a fantasy come true. Naruto pulled away. Hey Hinata-chan. I got loads to tell you. And so Naruto described in detail about his brother and his clan. Hinata listened to every word, amazed at the things he was telling her, but deep down inside part of her couldn't but muse over the fact that today was definitely worth almost dying for.